You arrive in the final seconds of a world once ruled by giants. The sky cracks open with fire. From above, a stone larger than mountains screams through the atmosphere, hotter than the sun, faster than thought. It does not ask permission. It does not notice the beauty it erases. The dinosaurs don't even have time to understand. They raise their heads. They blink. Then, in less than a heartbeat, the world shatters. A flash, a blast, a silence. You feel the shockwave ripple across the globe like a deep breath held too long and suddenly let go. Forests ignite before the wind even arrives. The sea retreats, stunned, before rising again in waves tall as cities. Dust blooms upward into the sky, not like smoke, but like memory grey, persistent and everywhere, and then it gets quiet. You stand on a broken landscape. The trees are gone. The rivers boil. The animals that ruled this place, those massive, powerful, roaring beings are still now. A feather drifts through the air, landing where no eyes remain to see it. Time slows. The air is heavy with ash. The sunlight has vanished, blocked by layers of dust suspended high above. It is suddenly cold, a strange, deep cold. Not the kind that nips at skin, but the kind that sinks into the bones of the planet itself. You walk through this silence, not as a survivor, but as a witness. You are a gentle observer of a world in mourning. Each step is soft against the layer of fallen leaves turned to soot. You pass a still lake covered in film. You see no ripples, no insects, no birds, only the ghost of what was, across continents. Fire and darkness dance together. Some creatures try to hide. Some burrow into the ground. Some, already small and quiet, wait without knowing why. There is no more roar, only the long echo of it fading into stillness. Above, the sky is no longer blue. It is the color of memory, of forgetting. The clouds carry no rain, only grief. Volcanoes wake, triggered by the trauma of the strike. They weep lava into the sea, where coral once bloomed. Even the ocean, vast and ancient, is silenced, its surface disturbed only by falling ash and the occasional floating limb of a long burned tree. And yet, in this vast silence, there is something else. No noise, not movement, but waiting. The earth, though wounded, still turns. The ground cools. The sky begins to settle. Deep beneath the layers of dust and bone and ruin, something holds on. You feel it not with your ears or eyes, but with a softer sense, a whisper of persistence, a promise unspoken. The silence does not mean the end. It means the pause before the breath, the slow inhale before life dares to rise again. Somewhere in the soil, seeds lie unburned. Somewhere in the darkness, a small creature curls into sleep. Somewhere beneath the ocean floor, tiny forms drift, unknowing and undeterred. You are here, in this hush, to feel the shape of absence, to understand that even great endings echo into gentle beginnings. And as the sky, still bruised, begins to turn ever so faintly, from ash-grey toward a lighter hue, you begin to wonder what happens when light returns. You open your eyes, and it is still dark, not the kind of dark that cradles sleep. This darkness is thicker, heavier. It stretches across the sky like a blanket woven from smoke above you. The sun still rises, but you no longer see it. Its light tries to reach the earth, but is caught by a veil of soot, dust, and sulfur from 1,000 fires and shattered stone. The sky has become a shield, not of protection, but of mourning. You breathe in. The air tastes different now. It is cooler, yes, but also strange. There is no familiar scent of green things or wet earth, only dryness, coldness, stillness. The forests that once fed on sunlight now stand paralyzed. Leaves droop, starved of energy. Some fall, confused. Some cling to branches like old thoughts refusing to let go. Without light, the engines of life, photosynthesis, growth, warmth pause, like a song interrupted mid-note, and the pause is global. Across all continents, in every forest and grassland and shallow sea, life waits. But it is not a patient waiting. It is the quiet ache of need. You walk through this dim world. Time moves slowly here. Days and nights blur into each other. There is no clear sunrise to greet the morning. No golden light to draw shadows on the ground. Even the animals feel it. Herbivores lose their food, and with them the predators lose their hunt. Not with violence, but with stillness. With hunger that spreads quietly, invisibly. Tiny creatures disappear, first bugs, frogs, fish. Then the larger ones who depended on them, the ocean too, turns somber. Phytoplankton, those sun-fed drift that nourish the sea, begin to vanish. And with them, the rhythm of the deep falters. The whales are not yet here. The coral is still broken. The sea is vast, but not at peace. You lift your gaze again. The sun is still there, burning, alive, unchanged. But between you and that star lies a barrier. Billions of microscopic particles, suspended high in the stratosphere. They reflect sunlight back into space. They dim the warmth before it can reach you. This is the impact winter, though it carries no snow. Just darkness, cold, delay. It does not freeze everything, but it slows everything down. Metabolism, movement, memory. In some places, the temperature drops by 10 degrees. In others, rainfall stops for months. Deserts expand. Forests shrink. Might think of this as death, but it's not. It's a kind of holding pattern. Life has not ended. It is simply folded in on itself, protecting its core. You kneel and press your hand into the soil. Beneath the surface, it is warmer. There are roots that still pulse faintly, spores that sleep with purpose, eggs tucked beneath decaying leaves, and deep in caves and burrows. Mammals curl into tight balls, their hearts slowed but steady. They do not know what has happened above. They only know to wait, to trust the rhythm of a world that once woke. Then with light, you begin to feel it too. Not fear, but a slow rhythm. A deep understanding that this is not the end. It is the night between chapters. Even in darkness, patterns continue. Earth's crust shifts, tides still rise. The sky may be clouded, but time is not paused. And above this shroud, above the soot, above the clouds, the stars still shine. The universe does not mourn. It watches quietly, patiently, letting Earth learn how to begin again. You sit with that thought. It comforts you, because even a world without sunlight can carry the memory of it. Even a leafless tree can remember the shape of spring. Even now, something below the surface is preparing to bloom. You step softly now. The earth feels padded, not by leaves, but by ash. Grey and gentle, it settles like time itself, layer by layer, erasing color and sound. But beneath that quiet dust, life hasn't left. It has only gone deeper. You kneel and press your palm to the ground. Cool at first, then warmer. The ash insulates. It protects what hides beneath. A memory wrapped in soil down here, away from the cold sky and the broken trees. tiny things cling to the threads of survival, seeds, not yet sprouting, not yet daring, just waiting folded tightly, like fists made of memory. They hold instructions, entire forests curled into grains. Each one remembers a sun it has never seen, and they are not alone. Spores drift through the soil like invisible stars. Fungi, unseen, stretch microscopic hands through darkness, linking root to root in silent networks of shared breath. Life here is not loud. It does not need to be. You imagine a mouse, fur soft and pulse steady, nestled in a burrow carved with instinct. Eyes closed, breath slow. The world above may be crumbling, but here, in the warm belly of the earth, life draws its breath inward. Insects tuck into logs. Worms coil in stillness. Reptiles, those old souls of evolution, retreat into crevices where time moves differently. The cold does not frighten them. They have survived it before. It is a rhythm their blood knows. Pause, wait. Endure some eggs rest untouched in nests, unaware of the fires that passed above. The shells are thin, yet strong enough to carry the weight of extinction and the hope of a future hatchling. You dig gently, parting layers of soil, finding threads of root systems that still live, not green, not blooming, but not gone. They are like held breath, like thoughts before words. They stretch in the dark, sensing when the world might soften again. Ferns prepare themselves. Lichens sleep on stone. Some plants do not panic when the sun disappears. They only shift into stillness, closing up like books, waiting for spring to turn the page. Even bacteria, the tiniest architects of recovery, continue their work unseen, digesting, breaking down, recycling what has fallen. There is no waste in nature, only transformation. And so you begin to understand, not all survival looks like strength. Sometimes it looks like stillness, like folding inward, like doing less, not more, like hiding beneath ash rather than resisting it. The earth is not dead. It is sleeping, and even in sleep there is motion. Cells divide slowly. Roots test the cold. A seed coat softens just enough to listen. You stay with this silence. It does not feel hopeless. It feels ancient, like the earth has done this before, because it has. Extinction is not new. Darkness has come and gone like a tide, and each time, life has waited in the cracks. You lie on the ash-blanketed ground now, feeling the warmth rise from beneath. Your body rests where a forest once stood, and beneath you roots, spores, seeds, all whisper the same quiet promise. We are not gone, we are only waiting. You stand within a silence that is no longer empty. A pale hush drapes the ruined valley, but something restless stirs beneath the ash. It begins with a single curl of green, so thin it might be mistaken for a memory of color. Yet it pushes upward, parting soot the way dawn parts dark. This is a fern fiddlehead, coiled like a question. Mark, rising through the cracks. You kneel to watch. The stem unrolls in slow motion, a ribbon loosening after too long in a box. Every unfurling cell drinks faint light that now sneaks through thinning clouds. The leaflets spread like small open palms, gathering whatever luminance remains. You notice a pattern. There is no rush, no hurry, no frantic claim of territory. The fern's quiet defiance is its patience. All around, other fiddleheads follow. They appear in clusters, carpeting the grey with fractal greens. Each frond is a fractal, echo of ancient geometry, triangles nested in triangles, spiraling toward the leaf tips. They do not bloom or burst, they breathe. In rhythmic sways, they test the air, sampling warmth, humidity, and the first shy photons that pierce the veil. Why ferns? You wonder, because they are old. Older than flowers, older than songbirds, older than most of the bones now buried in the soil. Their spores, light as sighs, drifted on winds even before dinosaurs thundered past. They have survived global droughts and floods, volcanic winters and icy millennia. Their strategy is simple: endure in miniature until the world is ready again. You imagine the network beneath your feet. Thin rhizomes snake through ash and clay, weaving mats that anchor the slope. They trap moisture, hold soil, and create microclimates, tiny oases where insects may someday return. The fern spike, scientists will call this sudden greening in fossil records, an exclamation mark after disaster, proof that life refuses to stay silent. A light breeze slips down the valley. Spores lift like golden dust motes, catching nascent sunlight. Each spore is only a single cell, yet inside it sleeps an entire forest blueprint. You follow one drifting particle with your eyes as it climbs invisible thermals. When it settles elsewhere, it will divide, sprout, and write green verse upon the land above. The sky is still the color of pewter, but its edges brighten. Clots of aerosol disperse day by day. Sunbeams spear through, illuminating patches of hillside the way. Lanterns reveal corners of a cave. In each lit circle, ferns spring up so quickly it feels as though the ground itself is exhaling pigment. You trace a fingertip along a fresh frond. The surface is velvet, coated in minute hairs that trap dew. Tiny droplets gather overnight, glimmering at dawn like pearls. When they fall, they wet the soil for seedlings waiting below. This is how ecosystems restart, molecule by molecule, drop by drop. Not all plants can wait in darkness. Trees need long roots, deep light, and thick bark. Flowers need pollinators, still absent from this quiet world. But ferns ask little: a patch of damp soil, a whisper of sun, a moment free of frost. Their needs are modest, their gift profound. They pave the way. Gradually, shade returns. Fronds arch over one another, creating dim corridors beneath. In that shelter, seeds from sleeping shrubs can germinate without burning. Beetles, emerging from burrows, scuttle along humid floors. Spiders weave silk between stems. Life layers itself like woven cloth, each strand reliant on the first. You breathe in, the air tastes green. Photosynthesis resumes in earnest now, releasing oxygen that mingles with the cooling breeze. With every hour, the carbon-rich veil thins, letting more light cascade. A positive feedback, scientists will say. Vegetation diminishes atmospheric carbon, which in turn fuels more vegetation. But here, in this hush, it simply feels like a gentle widening of daylight. You listen to soft rustles, no roaring predators, no chorus of birds, yet just the hush of ferns brushing one another. It resembles distant rainfall, steady and reassuring. You close your eyes and imagine the sound carrying across continents, announcing to every hidden life form that the season of waiting is ending. By dusk, twilight paints the fronds in silver. Spores release in evening drafts, charting new beginnings across valleys and dry riverbeds. Some will land on barren rock. Others will settle in ancient stream beds, soon to flow again. Success is not certain, yet probability multiplies with each drifting cloud of potential deep within each fern cell. Chloroplasts awaken like lanterns in a dark hallway. They capture photons and begin the ancient alchemy: water, carbon dioxide, and light transfigured into sugar and oxygen. You picture the equation not as symbols on a board, but as a soft, glowing script written across every leaf. Each sentence of light-driven chemistry becomes nourishment for roots. You cannot see. Those roots do something subtle and crucial. They push fractures into one's barren crust, breaking rock into soil grain by grain. Geologists of the future will read this work in thin sections of sandstone, noting how organic acids etched microscopic passages through quartz. You imagine their lenses tracing the ghost signatures of early pioneer plants and realizing that resilience is measurable down to the crystal beneath the ferns. A treaty is signed between kingdom plantae and kingdom fungi. Mycorrhizal filaments lace through rhizomes, trading minerals for sugars, information for shelter. In return, fungi extend the reach of roots, ferrying phosphorus from distant pebbles. This silent commerce is older than language, and you can almost feel the handshakes oft, filamentous and utterly faithful. Elsewhere, cyanobacteria thread through damp pockets, fixing nitrogen into forms fledgling plants can sip. Every microscopic contribution knits into an unseen tapestry of recovery. Ecology, you realize, is a chorus where even the quietest voice matters. The planet's atmosphere begins to respond. With each sunrise, more carbon is drawn down, more oxygen exhaled. Ozone thickens fraction by fraction, knitting a new shield against ultraviolet rage. In this incremental safety, DNA repair outpaces damage. Mutation still occurs, must, for adaptation, but catastrophes flood, is replaced by evolution's steady stream. You walk along a ridge that overlooks a mosaic of charcoal and green. From a distance, the landscape resembles a brushstroke painting, streaks of grey background touched with emerald highlights. Valleys cradle rivulets, now unfrozen, reflecting soft light like ribbons of glass. They carry minerals leached from volcanic dust, delivering nutrients downstream to nascent wetlands where horsetails and club mosses take tentative root alongside the ferns. In the distance, faint mist rises, a silent applause for every new leaf daring the light today. Close your eyes, and you can almost hear the pulse of planetary respiration returning. Carbon drawn in, oxygen released, waters transpired into the air, clouds gather on that moisture, drifting inland to rain upon soils newly stabilized by these early plants. The cycle begins to spin faster, as though an immense wheel, once stuck, receives a gradual push. You pause at a half-buried dinosaur, bone protruding from silt. Once the femur of a tyrant, now a perch for tender fronds. The contrast humbles you. Colossal strength reduced to scaffold for delicate life. You run your fingers along the fossil esse-mineral porous, feel silica where marrow once flowed, and sense continuity rather than loss. In death, giants become nurseries for the small. Calcium leaches into the soil, feeding the very plants that herald this new epoch. Even the sky starts to shift. Dust storms decline. Sunsets regain hue. Orange, peach, and lavender bleed between. Cloud layers scattering through the thinning aerosol. Photons paint the horizon in gradients reminiscent of long-forgotten twilights. Fern fronds turn subtly toward that color, like instruments tuning for a symphony yet to start. At night, dew forms thickly upon the verdant carpets. Droplets gather in grooves along leaf rachises, then slide toward stems, delivering drink to roots without rainfall. Such efficient design evolved across eons. It reappears here unprompted, as if the genome were a library always ready to lend the right book. You sit amid the fronds and let your breath synchronize with their chemical exhale. In, out, carbon for them, oxygen for you. Mutual and ancient, this invisible exchange binds your future to theirs. The knowledge settles gently. You are not merely witnessing recovery. You are participating in it by the act of breathing. From somewhere beyond the ridge comes a faint chirp, the first insect call to pierce the quiet. Since the impact winter began. The sound is delicate yet decisive, like the click of a seed cracking open. You feel gravity shift, hope gathers more mass. One by one, other notes join. A rasp of beetle wing, the whisper of a moth. They form a sparse lullaby, carried on night air that smells faintly of resin and new chlorophyll. Dawn approaches again. You see its promise in the paling stars, in the blush rising along eastern clouds. Tomorrow will be brighter than today, and the pattern will likely repeat. Incremental, unstoppable. You rise, brushing ash from your clothes that are no longer grey but dusted with green spores. They cling to fabric, ready to travel wherever you walk next. You realize you have been drafted into the dissemination of life, a wandering spore bearer, an unwitting agent of regreening. You walk before sunrise, when the valley still steams. From yesterday's rain and fern fronds glisten with beads of light. The air is soft, scented, carrying the distant hush of dripping leaves. Somewhere overhead a faint dawn glow gathers, yet the forest floor remains a dusky chamber. In this gauzy half-light something moves quick, low, almost invisible. You quiet your breath and listen. A pebble shifts. A pulse of rustling litter. Out from the shadow of a rotting log emerges a creature no larger than your thumb, furred, whiskered, bright-eyed. It pauses, nose trembling, then darts beneath the arch of a decaying branch. You follow, slow as fog, witnessing the first footfalls of a lineage that will someday fill earth and sky. These mammals have always been here signed, survivors under dinosaur feet, but now the canopy belongs to them. Their ancestors once lived in margins, burrows, bark crevices, twilight niches where big reptilian bodies could not squeeze. Their strategy was smallness, stealth, night. In the long dark of impact winter, that strategy became salvation. You imagine that winter, months of chill, years of dim light, forests stripped bare, large cold-blooded monarchs weakened, giant herbivores starved, top predators found nothing to hunt, yet deep underground, small warm bodies curled together, metabolic fires, banked but never extinguished. They sipped, stored fat, dozed through scarcity, birthed litters in darkness. Warm blood granted them inner furnaces. Fur wrapped that heat in miniature cloaks. Milk nourished fragile newborns when green food failed. Dawn arrives more fully. Golden. Ribbons sift between fern fronds and paint the loam with flickers. With light comes activity. From hollows and holes appear others, shrew like insectivores. Marsupials no bigger than leaves, early placentals whose flexible ankles let them scamper both branch and ground. Their shapes differ, yet they share three quiet revolutions. Curiosity, adaptability, endurance lives in their hearts. Four-chambered pumps pushing warm crimson through narrow arteries, keeping muscles ready for sudden sprint. Curiosity lives in their brains, now modest bumps of cortex that twitch and map the world by scent, sound, taste. Adaptability lives in their jaws, tiny bones re-engineered into sensitive ears, teeth diversified into chisels, blades, grinder stools. To sample anything edible, you crouch beside a low bush where a mammalian pioneer pauses. It clutches a beetle larva with delicate hands, incisors clipping the shell, tongue tasting protein. Its dark eyes gleam with problem-solving light. You sense an intelligence measured not in words, but in flexible choices. Try this path, test. That seed, learn from pain, remember sweetness. Each decision, however small, rewrites destiny. Turn your gaze upward. Branches intertwine overhead like braided rivers. Some mammals already climb. Their tails coil for balance. Their toes bear gripping pads. One leaps, sails a meter, lands silent on moss. Another hangs upside down, nibbling spores off bark. Gravity, once a dictator, becomes an invitation to explore. Listen deeper. Tiny lungs whistle. Heartbeats flutter. Beneath them flows a slower drum-continental drift, volcanic murmur, climatic pulse. Yet these little creatures match the planet's tempo with rapid life cycles. Gestation measured in weeks. Generations in seasons. Natural selection accelerates, testing mutations quickly against ever-shifting landscapes. Predation still lurks. Crocodiles patrol waterways. Snakes coil among leaves. Avian raptors watch from clearing edges. But predators now hunt smaller prey, shaping an arms race of alertness. Mammals evolve larger eye sockets for twilight, more acute hearing for rustle. A richer olfactory bulb to detect danger before it solidifies. Fear becomes a creative sculptor, carving sharper senses with each generation. Night falls again. The forest glows with cold bioluminescent fungi, and mammals own the darkness. Their ancestors invented nocturnal vision long before, now they refine it. Tapetum lucidum mirrors light back through retinal cells. Pupils widen to saucer width. Whiskers map air currents. Moving under starlight, they leave only faint impressions in dew. Settle beside a stream. Moonlight shivers on water. A tiny mammal dips paws to wash seeds, a ritual older than culture. Cleaned food slides between mollusks, surfaces that will, millions of years hence, craft the smiles of lions, the laughter of primates, the coffee sipping of sapiens. You smile at the thought. In this quiet epoch, the blueprint of your own existence is being drafted. The earth is warming slowly now. Impact clouds thin, ferns seed space to flowering shrubs. With blossoms come beetles, moths, nectar. Mammals follow. Abundance upward into daylight, diversifying diets. Some lengthen limbs for running over open ground. Others broaden hands for climbing higher. One lineage stretches skin between wrists and ankles, inventing a primitive glide. Another grows larger and slower, trading scurry for strength. Inside each cell, DNA edits scripts. Transposons jump, genes duplicate, regulatory switches flip. Most changes fail, a handful thrive, and every successful tweak becomes a note in life's unfolding symphony. You cannot hear this molecular music, but you feel its rhythm in the restless energy of the clearing. Pause beside a burrow entrance at dawn. From within, pink newborns squeak. They are blind, hairless, but fed by milk rich with sugar, fat, immune whispers from mother's blood. Lactation is an alchemy unique to mammals, converting plant and insect into warm, liquid future. You watch her emerge, thin after gestation, yet alert. She forages briefly, returning with a cricket, then coils around her infancer, living furnace against chill. Sunlight strengthens day by day, coaxing buds to unfurl on newly evolved angios. The mammals sense the change. Their active hours lengthen, coat colors lighten, circadian clocks reset. With longer days comes space for play. Juveniles chase leaves, wrestle siblings, practice leaps they will need to escape owls. Through play, neural circuits wire dexterity, social bonds, creative solutions. Wind carries novel scents, resin from young pines, petals from first magnolias. Mammals navigate this aromatic map with noses tuned to parts per trillion. Smell guides them to food, mates, territories. Later, some lineages will refine olfaction into pheromone dialogues, migration compasses, even memory triggers, powerful enough to pull salmon across oceans. The humble nose becomes an evolutionary oracle. Seasons assert themselves. Wet months teem with insects, dry months hide them. Flexibility decides fate. Some mammals store nuts in caches, others slow metabolism. A few migrate short distances. Strategies differ. Purpose harmonizes survive to see another dawn. You sense a finite stillness ending. Far off, faint tremors herald tectonic uplift, rivers shift, coastal plains broaden, new habitats beckon bold wanderers. A pair of mammals ventures beyond the fern margin onto open silt where grasses will someday root. Their footprints press, delicate outlines, destinies poised on soft substrate. Predators adapt in parallel. A feathered raptor swoops, talons extended. One mammal freezes, merging with leaf pattern. Another bolts, zigzags into thorn thicket. Both responses succeed. Selection records to valid answers to the same lethal question, ensuring diversity persists. Thunder rolls, summer storm. Rain drums, canopy, floods burrows. Some nests drown, others perch safely in tree forks. Calamity is impartial teacher, rewarding elevation, discouraging low ground. Within decades, some species will evolve semi-arboreal births, others water-resistant. Lightning splits an ancient snag, igniting fire that sweeps a hillside. Afterward, charred ground germinates opportunistic herbs. Mammals sift embers for roasted seeds, nutrient-dense gifts from destruction. Catastrophe, once global, now local, fosters innovation rather than extinction. As centuries pass, you feel them as extended breaths. Body sizes creep upward. 10 grams become 50, 50 become 300. Larger forms hold heat, defend territory, see over seedlings. They still fit beneath predator radar for now. Soon, arms racers will sculpt sabers, antlers, hooves. But at this hour, moderation is optimal. Growth is gradual. Stand on a ridge at twilight. You survey a quilt of green, brown, and silver streams. Among rustling leaves echoes a chorus of mammal voices. Chirps, clicks, trills, scent marks, foot, drumming. Communication diversifies, carrying warnings, invitations, identities. Sociality ignites in pocket spares bond. Sisters share nests. Communal vigilances reduce individual risk. The first fragile threads of society weave. Overhead, stars wheel silently. Constellations are the same, you know, yet none have been named. The mammals do not map them. But their internal clocks sync to lunar cycles, guiding breeding peaks. Migration starts. Navigation by light and magnetism is unconscious poetry embedded in bone. You lie on your back, listening. A soft patter of feet approaches. A curious juvenile sniffs your boot, whiskers brushing leather. It squeaks a sound between question and greeting, then scampers away. You realize this encounter is precursor to future meetings between mammal and mammal, species and species, until one lineage learns to tell stories of origin. Mist rises, carrying petrichor. You taste minerals, old volcanic glass eroded into fertile dust. Life's banquet table expands. Even microorganisms in mammal guts shift, evolving cellulose digesting enzymes, enabling future ruminants to harvest plains of grass not yet invented. Partnerships multiply, gut flora, skin mites, seed-burying rodents, and sprouting plants. The biosphere becomes a tapestry of mutual debts. As night deepens, you hear a muffled drumming far below, magma shifting in quiet chambers. Hot plumes rise. Slowly, their future islands, still unformed. When they breach the sea, they will offer fresh stage for mammal pilgrims, rafts of green clinging to basalt coastlines. You realize that evolution is not only change within bodies, but voyages across newborn worlds. The map itself is a restless creature, and these small furred survivors will ride its heartbeat. Their courage whispers in the cooling darkness tonight. Tomorrow, their footprints will guide evolution toward unimagined, open horizons, morning again. Sun climbs confidently now, unchallenged by ash. On a sun-dappled branch perches a new shape, not quite reptile, not yet bat, but wings of skin stretched. Between elongated fingers, it snatches a moth, mid-air glides to another trunk, clings inverted. You witness flight reinvented. Gravity, once a limit, transforms into playground. Around noon, you rest beside a pool. Water surface ripples. A semi-aquatic mammal paddles past. Feet, dense fur, nostrils that close. Soon descendants will become otters, beavers, whales. Adaptation is a door forever unlocked, inviting any brave enough to turn the knob. Quiet tides beyond sight carry seeds of future continental voyages eastward. The day wanes, shadows lengthen, chorus quiets. As the first star appears, you think of oceans beyond the horizon where life's drama is also rewriting. There, fish. Schools shift, coral ghosts linger, and strange survivors plot new shapes. Your curiosity drifts seaward with the breeze. You stand on a cliff where land meets an ocean that seems at first unchanged. Waves still breathe in long, even sighs, tracing lace upon the sand. Yet the water below hides a silence as deep as the sky above her, hush born of absence. When the asteroid struck, it found the sea as surely as the countenance. Shockwaves raced through water, stunning creatures that had never known thunder underwater. Mega tsunamis rose 500 meters high, scouring coasts and flinging boulders far inland. After the roar came darkness. After darkness, chemical rain that turned surface layers acidic and starved of oxygen. You close your eyes and picture the rulers that once patrolled these depths. Mosasaurs with double-hinged jaws, long-necked plesiosaurs gliding like cathedrals. Ichthyosaurs shaped like silver spears, all gone now, their bones settling into quiet silt. Above them, the spiraled shells of ammonites drifted like empty lanterns before dissolving in corrosive brine. Collapse can be swift in water, because water carries change to every corner, yet not everything perished. In the dim layers just below ultraviolet fury, tiny survivors endured. Planktonic algae cloaked in glass armor, cyanobacteria curled into protective mats. Bacteria that needed no sunlight at all waited until ash thinned. Then, in numbers beyond counting, they divided. Carbon dioxide dissolved into the sea, and the blooming plankton feasted, drawing it down cell by shimmering cell. You lean forward, noticing the surface now sparkles with microscopic life. Each glittering fleck is a diatom or coccolith, refracting dawn. From space, they will someday paint pale green swirls across gyres, but from here they are only motes of promise. Where they flourish, oxygen rises again. Where they die, their bodies drift like snow, carrying carbon to mud and locking it away. Farther offshore, coral reefs once burst with color. Impact shocks and acid pulses bleached them ghost white. Many collapsed into rubble fields. Yet some fragments clung to shaded overhangs, sheltering polyps that would later found new colonies. Corals rebuild by millimeters per year, slower than storms. Yet storms pass and limestone remains. Among the rubble swim fish with unfamiliar outlines. The extinction cleared ecological stages, and evolution auditions new players. Ray-finned teleosts explode into niches vacated by reptiles. Some shrink into shoaling sardine clouds, others bulk into grouper forms able to crush crabs with slab-like jaws. Fin spines lengthen, tails narrow, scales rearrange. Each morphology a guess at what tomorrow might demand. Sharks, elders of vertebrate design, weathered the catastrophe better than most. Cartilage bends but does not break, and their sense guides them through turbid water. Still, many lineages vanished. The survivors diversify into new shapes. Small dogfish combing kelp thickets and swift hunters chasing shoals across open blue. Their teeth, shed by the millions, will litter future riverbeds as fossils. Beneath the photosynthetic ceiling, deep-sea vents glow like inverted night skies. Here, chemosynthetic bacteria feed on hydrogen sulfide, weaving sugar out of stone, and heat tube worms attend these volcanic oases, their white bodies lit by internal symbionts. Impact winter barely touched them. Sunlight was never their currency. Currents change as continents drift. New sea passages redirect heat, sculpt forge upwelling zones that ferry nutrients from abyss to surface. Wherever upwelling meets sun, plankton bloom, fish swarm, birds, and, in ages ahead, whales congregate. The ocean becomes a moving mosaic, patches of feast, stretches of famine, lines of invisible temperature that migratory species learn to read. And what of marine reptiles? Though the giants are gone, their lineage finds unexpected paths. On coastal flats, small lizard-like creatures forage in tidal pools. Webbing thickens between toes. Salt glands evolve to purge brine. In a few million years, some descendants will dive for fish as sea turtles do today. Others will glide through open water. But for now they are humble beachcombers, unaware of grandeur sleeping in their genes. Even as you watch, the tide recedes to reveal seagrass shoots poking through sand. Flowering plants rarely ventured into the sea before, yet with reptilian grazers absent, space lies open. These grasses root, spread rhizomes, and slow currents, trapping sediment that will build quiet meadows. In these meadows, juvenile fish will hide, and nutrient loops will tighten around blades that sway like metronomes. Offshore, a flock of birds skims the surface, plunge diving for anchovies. Their wings beat salt spray into silver veils. Birds inherited the sky from their saurian ancestors, and now they claim the sea's ceiling as well, linking worlds each time they dive. You breathe in rhythm with the tide's slow draw, slow release. The ocean mirrors your chest, reminding you that your blood carries the salt of ancient waters. Every heartbeat is an echo of distant waves. every breath an exchange forged first by plankton. You belong to this story, woven from marine beginnings. As day deepens, sunlight penetrates farther, activating pigments in drifting algae that turn the water turquoise. Colors return cautiously, but they return. Where light goes, energy follows. Where energy gathers, complexity sprouts. Microbes dance, larvae drift, shellfish settle, stitching the water column together like threads in a living tapestry. Night approaches, yet darkness here is not emptiness. Bioluminescent dinoflagellates kindle when waves disturb them, sprinkling stars across the surf. Each flash is a chemical protest that doubles as wonder. You trail a hand through shallows, and liquid constellations bloom around your fingers. In the hush following extinction, beauty still speaks. Storm clouds gather on the horizon, their anvils violet against saffron dusk. Lightning forks, briefly revealing a breaching fish. Rain begins to fall, fresh water carrying minerals from resurrected soils, nurturing coastal blooms. The cycles spin, evaporation, condensation, river flow, ocean mixing. Climate and life braid ever tighter. Moonlight lays a path across calm water. Along that path float sargassum mats teeming with shrimp, crabs, hatchling turtles. These drifting islands carry life across basins, linking distant shores. Connectivity, you realize, is the ocean's genius. Everything touches, everything trades, everything moves. Far below, sediments settle in layers of plankton, snow, and dark dust. They will harden into rock records, telling of a moment when carbon dipped, temperatures moderated, and diversity blossomed anew. Even now, those first thin layers begin to accumulate. Quiet diaries hidden from storms. You sit, letting the breath of the sea align with the cadence of your heart, and listen to waves. Speaking memories too vast for language. Somewhere beyond the horizon, continents continue their stately drift, rearranging currents that will test every lineage flourishing tonight. Uncertainty is the only constant, and in that uncertainty lies endless creativity. The tide turns again. Foam caressing rock in farewell. Stars emerge, mirrored on glossy pools, like two realms nodding to each other. You feel the boundary between sea and sky blur, as though the planet inhales constellations and exhales phosphorescence. Time drifts, and with it drift stories told only in molecules. Sulfate carried by rivers meets methane rising from seafloor. Mud, and together they feed arches of microbial mats. These invisible architects knit blankets that moderate chemistry, turning poison into potential. Over centuries their work will clear the way for oysters to build reefs, for kelp forests to root along rocky peninsulas, for tide-swept channels to chorus with dolphin whistles. Listen deeper, and you may catch the hush of genes experimenting in darkness. Somewhere beneath you, a lineage of fish begins to thicken bones in its pectoral fins, a subtle reinforcement that will one day bear weight on mudflats. Another lineage reshapes its jaw, hinge to gulp air at the surface, tasting life above the waves. Each mutation is slight, uncelebrated, yet together they compose the prologue to amphibious ventures that will redraw coastlines with footprints. Currents usher you south toward what will become polar seas. Their ice is only a seasonal skin, thin and tentative, but volcanic updrafts push nutrients into surface glare, feeding krill swarms so vast their shadows darken the water. Predatory fish circle these crimson clouds, and early penguin-like birds dive arrow straight through the feast, wings recalibrated into flippers. They surface to gulp air, their feathered coats steaming in bright chill. Then plunge again, biological pistons, driving the engine of new food webs. Now turn eastward across, a basin warming under lengthening summers. Here mangrove ancestors inch seaward, their roots like slow fingers testing salinity. Between roots, juvenile sharks hide, and crabs sculpt labyrinths of mud. Above, wetlands filter river water heavy with volcanic ash, trapping silt that would smother reefs farther out. Land and sea negotiate, each giving, each taking, balancing life as if by gentle breath. Remember this. Recovery is not a single moment of triumph, but a mosaic of quiet collaborations. Microbe with mineral, plant with current, fish with kelp, tide with moon. You witness only a heartbeat of it tonight, but the pattern is set. The ocean has chosen renewal. In that rhythm of renewal, you sense a message whispered through salt. Life does not rush, yet it never truly stops. It pauses, transforms, and resurfaces, always seeking light, always inventing forms to hold it in endless, gentle cycles. You wake before dawn to a hush, unlike the nights that came before. The air, once sharp with volcanic dust, now smells faintly of wet stone and distant pollen. Somewhere unseen, a river breathes mist into a valley that has not tasted steady warmth for years. You draw the recycled chill into your lungs, feel it carry less bite than yesterday, and know the planet's long inhalation of darkness is ending. Above, the sky pales, not to the bruised pewter of impact winters, but to a hesitant lavender. Ash still lingers, yet equatorial winds that circled the globe have thinned the veil. In that brightening edge, a timid sun pulses, filtering through widening blue. Each ray touches soils thick with spores, waters clouded by plankton, rocks fissured by freeze and thorned. The whole world seems to lean toward light the way seedlings lean before they germinate as days stretch. You sense the planet tilting back into a rhythm older than catastrophe. Lengthening threads of sunlight weave into a thermal quilt, warming seas first, then land. Oceans release vapor that climbs in ghostly columns, condenses into pearls of cloud, and drifts inland on newborn breezes. What began as faint wisps soon thickens into towering cumulus summits, casting moving islands of shade across regreening plains. You walk through prairie that was dust plain just a decade ago. Ferns still carpet the low ground, but new pioneers rise among them. Flowering shrubs, juvenile conifers, grasses that put down braiding roots. Their pigments glow deeper under full spectrum sun, manufacturing sugars with greedy speed. Leaves exhale moist oxygen, and in that exhale the air feels softer, more forgiving. Photosynthesis, paused for so long, now roars back silently, drawing carbon from the sky, molecule by molecule. By molecule, but with carbon uptake comes cooling moderation. Greenhouse gases that once trapped volcanic heat are chewed into lignin, cellulose, shells, and soil. Rain helps, washing sulfur from the high air, scrubbing aerosols, escorting nutrients seaward. Each storm is both broom and painter-clearing residues, while streaking slopes with freshwater rivulets. Where those rivulets meet seeds, seedlings unfurl. Where they carve channels, rivers restart their winding conversations with rock. Climate scientists far in the future will describe complex feedback loops, reduced albedo as snowpacks shrink, increased evaporation fueling convective storms, chemical weathering of uplifted ranges locking down atmospheric carbon. Here, walking inside the loop, you witness only sensations. A warmer breeze at midnight, cicada hums At dusk, where none sang last year, dew so thick at dawn it drips like silver strings from every blade of grass. Listen carefully. Thunder, once a harbinger of destruction, now signals renewal. Lightning forks into nascent forests, splitting trunks, yet also opening canopies that let light reach seedlings below. The charred wood enriches soil, charcoal binding nutrients. Fire and water, storm and sunshine opposites dance in cycles, newly rebalanced. Glance upward again. Jet streams shift, realigned by uneven warming of land and sea. Their high-altitude rivers of wind steer storms into patterns unfamiliar to the ancient world, but perfect for this rebirth. Seasonal monsoons begin to pulse across continents, guiding migrations of insects, stirring rivers to floodplains where sediments rejuvenate farmland not yet claimed by any farmer. On coastal shelves, warmer currents carry tropical heat poleward, melting seasonal sea ice earlier, extending algal blooms across polar summers. Those blooms feed krill swarms, which feed fish, which feed sleek marine mammals, evolving from once terrestrial stock. The chain of plenty depends on sunlight's reliable meter. Every heartbeat at sea now syncs with the daily crest of photosynthetic energy inland. Mountain snows still fall, though less bitterly. Snowmelt gathers in braided streams that stitch watersheds across the continent. You crouch to touch one such stream. Its chill is kind, its clarity tinted faintly amber with dissolved organic matter from leaf litter upstream. Every droplet is a story of evaporation, wind travel, condensation, and descent, a pilgrimage from ocean to sky to earth and back. Beneath your feet, soil microbes awaken. They metabolize faster as temperatures climb, shredding leaf detritus into humus, releasing minerals locked during the long cold. Earthworms tunnel, aerating clay. Beetles churn mulch. Mycorrhizal threads network root to root, distributing phosphorus. Gleaned from ancient ash, nutrient cycles, once slowed to glacial pace, accelerate until the ground itself seems to breathe. The animals feel the change first as comfort, then as invitation. Amphibians leave muddy burrows to chorus by ponds newly replenished by rain. Reptiles bask longer on sunlit stones, their eggs incubating in warmer sand. Mammals you met earlier range farther, following berry-rich shrubs blooming in longer seasons. Their metabolisms quicken. Some species grow larger, shedding cold-adapted compactness for sleeker forms, suited to endurance under a more generous sun. Birds descendants of dominant. Dinosaurs sense atmospheric clarity in their hollow bones. Warm thermals rise, promising effortless glide. Feathers vibrate with coming opportunity, and migratory circuits in tiny brains begin to map novel routes from coast to grassland to mountain. Soon, wings will paint the warming air with color, sound, and an intention older than language. Storm systems you once feared now become sculptors of landscape. Rains persist for hours, then whole days, greening deserts. Flash floods carve new canyons. Silt-laden rivers widen deltas. Lakes overflow into basins thirsty for millennia. Water is again both nomad and architect, restlessly relocating lives. Ingredients. At night, you look up at stars sharpened by reduced atmospheric haze. Constellations return to clarity, and among them float thin, noctilucent clouds, high icy whispers that appear only in stable mesospheres. Their filament glow testifies that water vapor now ascends safely to altitudes where previous aerosol blankets had blocked it. Recovery reaches even the edge of space. Stand beneath a growing forest of early broadleaf trees. Their canopies intercept sunlight, creating pockets of shade where mosses thrive and young mammals hide. Evapotranspiration from millions of leaves lifts moisture into afternoon skies, birthing local showers that fall again by twilight in perfect, self-sustaining elegance. You realize that the planet is engineering its own thermostat using biology. As circuitry, geologically quiet plates now stir. Thermal expansion of oceans and shifting sediment loads alter stress regimes. Mountain ranges ripple upward, exposing fresh rock to rainfall and root. Weathering draws still more carbon from the air, sequestering it in carbonate shells that will someday settle on seabeds. The rock cycle and the carbon cycle converse like old companions reunited after tragedy. Somewhere on these slopes, an early ancestor of a palm lifts fronds to the sky. In its tissues, specialized vessels pump water higher than any fern ever could. An innovation suited to the higher evaporative demand of warming air. Evolution, quickened by new niches, begins to experiment again with form, color, scent. Flowers diversify pigments to attract insect pollinators blooming in tandem. Nectar chemistry tunes itself to each partner species in unconscious negotiation. The rains bring soundscapes, patter on leaves, gurgle in gullies, distant waterfalls reawakened. These acoustics guide animal behavior. Frogs time their calls between thunderclaps. Insects synchronize emergencies after heavy downpours. Echoes bounce among trunks, teaching each life form the contours of its expanding home. Sundown paints the sky tangerine, not the muted orange of dust, but a saturated glow born of cleaner air and abundant water vapor. You watch clouds tower like illuminated sculptures, anvils gilded at their edges by alpenglow. Sun pillars rise where ice crystals align, reflecting beams back to your eyes as vertical shafts of radiance. Phenomena impossible under opaque skies become nightly spectacles. A gentle breeze carries petrichor, smell of rain meeting dry soil mingled with volatile oils, released by seedlings as biochemical greetings to pollinators. Breathing this perfume, you feel euphoria, as though every cell recognizes survival written in moisture-laden air. Yes, volatility remains. Cooling trends may overshoot, droughts will strike, volcanoes may cough, but resilience now outweighs fragility. Heat engines of atmosphere and ocean spin at speeds that spread but seldom shatter life. Feedbacks favor balance because living webs participate in climate tuning. Forests shade ground, wetlands capture floods, algae draw carbon deep. Near midnight, fog gathers along a riverbed, its tendrils silver under a waxing moon. Fog forms when saturated air cools, visible proof that water, warmth, and wind again converse in delicate equilibrium. Somewhere inside the mist, seeds mounted on silky plumes glide toward unseen meadows, already dreaming of germination. Morning arrives with birdsong first, tentative, then exuberant. Warblers test scales inherited from reptilian ancestors. Birds beat wings they will someday use for transcontinental journeys. The sky that once refused sunlight now rings with flight practice. You rise, dew-clad, and spot the first rainbow you have seen in decades. Red to violet, unbroken, bridging horizon to horizon. It is a prism of regained possibility, evidence that sunlight and water coexist again in playful physics. All around. The continent exhales greenhouse gases as they cycle through respiration and decay. But the tally returns toward equilibrium. You realize the planet's fever is breaking. Temperature graphs that once spiked downward and upward now settle into gentle sine waves, a climate lullaby suitable for proliferation. You walk northward under a high sun that traces a longer arc across clearer skies. Shadows shorten, days lengthen, and with each step you witness life writing new verses in colors across the page of reborn Earth. Warmth quickens pulse. The promise of rain invites roots to push deeper. Breeze sets leaves, murmuring in tonal languages, still decoding themselves. Where rivers converge, wetlands sprawl, saturating soil until it sighs underfoot. You watch herons stalk shallows, their patience mirrored in still water and still deeper in the planet's slow restoration. Each drop that clings to their feathers catches sunlight, flashing tiny codes that say survive, adapt, flourish. Here, under warming light and cooling night, Earth no longer merely endures. It begins composing symphonies of climate and life anew. You walk into dawn lit by the soft hush of wings. Where tyrannosaurs once thundered, only feathered silhouettes now mark the horizon. Their shadows slide across dewy grass like calligraphy, rewriting the story of survival in elegant strokes. A quiet chirrup replaces the roar, yet the silence feels filled rather than emptied. The sky is crowded with possibilities. The avian line, slender and delicate beside its titanic kin, endured the cataclysm that felled the giants. Through luck, adaptation, and perhaps the refuge of forest understories, certain small theropods crossed the burning threshold into the age that followed. They carried the gifts of hollow bones, warm blood, rapid reproduction, and above all feathers to a world suddenly bereft of large flyers. Now, with the airways clear, their descendants rise unopposed. You gaze up and notice how each form sketches a different answer to the problem of flight. One lineage, broad-winged and slow, rose the air above wetlands, scanning for darting fish. Another, compact and arrow-fast, streaks between trees, its wings tapering to razors of precision. Somewhere overhead, a flock wheels in unison, the turning mass rippling like a single organism. In the early years after the impact, resources were sparse, climates erratic, and niches empty. The birds diversified rapidly, an evolutionary sprint known later as adaptive radiation. Beaks hardened, curved, lengthened. Bills gained or widened into sieves. Feet sprouted claws for climbing, webs for paddling, talons for grasping. Feathers themselves transformed, some stiffened into flight fans, others softened into insulation or display. You sit beneath a young conifer and consider the mechanics hidden beneath plumage. A bird's wing is a living airfoil, bone-fused too. Minimized drag, muscle anchored deep within the chest, to pull strongly yet economically. Air sacs lace the torso, turning the body into a bellows that breathes in continuous cycles. Even at rest, tiny hearts pound at rhythms that rival insect wings, fueling high-temperature physiology with oxygen-rich blood. Look closer. The robin-sized forager tilts its head, listening for beetle larvae under bark. It cocks its beaker multi-tool miles beyond the simple jaws of its dinosaur ancestors and chisels free its meal. Not far away, a crest-feathered male puffs iridescent breast feathers, smoothing them into a mirror to capture sun. The display is courtship, a contest of light and rhythm. Sexual selection carves beauty as surely as natural selection carves utility. The sky, once ruled by pterosaurs with leathery sails spanning meters, now belongs solely to feathers. Pterosaur extinction left open the thermal columns, the cliffside nests, the carrion patrols. Birds stepped into every vacancy. Giant, flightless gastonithids stalked forest floors like understated echoes of carnivorous past, while early ancestors of ducks and geese claimed the waterways. Songbirds, still primitive, began to prototype the syrinx, two-voiced instrument that would one day weave forests with music. You follow a river upstream and encounter another innovation: migration. As climates warmed yet fluctuated, some populations evolved to chase perpetual spring. They memorized the geometry of coastlines, the scent of mountain passes, the polarized shimmer of twilight. Magnetite crystals in their skulls read the planet's magnetic verses. Star patterns map their night highways. Their journeys stitch continents together, turning isolated biomes into stepping stones of shared genes. Predators adapt in parallel. Mammalian hunters prowl nest trees, snakes coil among roots, yet birds meet threat with strategy. They camouflage eggs in speckled pallets, build nests over water, defend colonies with mobbing cries. Ultrashell chicks hatch naked and helpless, trusting speed of growth to outrun vulnerability. Precocial chicks emerge ready to sprint, trading growth for early autonomy. Both tactics thrive in different theaters. You pause at midday where a floodplain opens to broad grass. A towering flightless bird strides across, legs like coiled springs, head scanning for lizards. Its reduced wings, tipped with lethal claws, reveal kinship to raptors rather than ostriches. Flight, once salvation, is here relinquished for size and speed, proving adaptation is not progress toward a goal but motion toward opportunity. Above, a hawk circles, casting a wheeling shadow. Its eyes, forward-facing and magnified, resolve mouse whiskers from heights your own vision blurs to dust. It stoops, folding wings, slicing air at velocities that bend bone but are absorbed by joints evolved for such violence. Impact is swift, silence returns. The grass again waves gently under warming breeze. Feather microstructure whispers another tale. Barbs and barbules interlock with microscopic hooks, forming veins that self-repair under preening. Pigments embed. Signals: melanin for strength and darkness, carotenoids for blazing orange, structural nanoscaffolds for blues that are colors of absence, the hue of scattered light rather than dye. Feathers thus carry both engineering and language, strength to lift, pattern to communicate. Insulation to endure cold nights still common under post-impact climate swings. Even waste becomes opportunity. Guano enriches volcanic soils, feeding ferns and pioneering shrubs. Seeds swallowed and excreted travel valleys, accelerating plant dispersal. Birds become gardeners of the sky, tailoring vegetation that in turn furnishes new perches, fruits, and insect prey. What began as survival now interlaces into mutualism. You rest at dusk near a cliff of soft limestone where sea meets land. Hundreds of small seabirds return in roaring clouds, wings beating salt air into thunder. They nest in burrows, trading flight glory for subterranean safety. From each burrow flows chatter, individual calls, recognized among thousands, navigation by sound. In the gloaming, communication networks pulse across colonies, information about predators, food patches, mate fidelity encoded in chirps and screams. Night deepens, and another marvel emerges. Echolocation. Within a dark cave nearby, tiny oilbirds flutter, emitting rapid clicks. Sound waves ricochet off stone, creating auditory maps. In this sensory remodel, vision surrenders to acoustics. Yet feathers still embrace bodies, proving old adaptations can house new senses. Consider energy. Small birds run hot, hearts thumping 600 times per minute, metabolic fires near the edge of combustion. They eat constantly, fueling engines that cannot idle. Nectar feeders evolve tongues like brushes and stomachs like hourglasses, processing sugar streams that would sicken other species. Raptors gorge intermittently, storing calories and muscle and focusing on precision hunts. Diversity radiates along the axis of fuel and expenditure. Storm clouds roll in, purple and electric. You shelter under an overhang and witness a phenomenon born purely of wing, dynamic soaring. Offshore, early relatives of albatrosses exploit wind gradients over swells, tracing infinity loops without flapping. Lift pays for lift. Gravity pays for speed. Energy is borrowed from weather itself. Such mastery will later carry them around oceans in perpetual travel, their feet touching land only to breed. The storm passes. The moon climbs. Nocturnal silhouettes glide out towels. They wear feathers adapted into silence, fringed leading edges, velvet surfaces cancelling turbulence. Their auditory maps are so precise they locate vol heartbeats beneath snow. Survival hinges on calculus of physics invisible to eyes, but inherent to every vein and contour feather. You think on time. In a few dozen million years, these lineages will refine into icterids, hummingbirds, parrots, eagles. Some will again reach sizes rivaling small planes. Others will shrink to avian jewels, massing less than a coin. Each will carry the legacy of this moment when the sky, cleared of reptilian titans, offered an open canvas. But now, as dawn hints once more, a chorus begins, raw, tentative, but undeniably musical. Early syrinxes flex twin membranes to craft notes that bounce between trees. Song is territory, seduction, identity. The forest becomes an orchestra tuning itself, each species occupying a different acoustic niche. Frequencies layer like mist. You know that song will one day accompany sunrise on all continents. But here it is, young, fragile, searching. You close your eyes and let it weave through your heartbeat, acknowledging how sound may shape ecosystems. As much as sunlight and rain begin to walk back toward inland valleys. Along the path, fresh footprints of a small mammal overlap bird tracks, testament to new cohabitations. Overhead, a kingfisher plunges into shallows, emerges with shimmering fish, beats wings to a branch beak heavier, but bones still hollow. Success measured in grams of protein and future nestlings. Feathers dry quickly, waterproofing oils bead water away. Keratin, same material as claws and horn, arranges into filaments, lighter than hair, yet stronger than steel by weight. Innovation layered upon innovation, evidence that life builds complexity not from scratch, but from retooling old parts. Before noon, heat arrives, you climb a high ridge. Thermals rise here. Vultures already kettle, scanning for carcasses of reptiles. Too slow in warming climates. Scavenging is as crucial as hunting. Decomposition completes the nutrient loop. Birds assume the role seamlessly. Their stomach acid potent enough to neutralize ancient bacteria. At the summit, you sit where wind streams, unbroken, and for a long while you simply watch silhouettes drifting against the sun. Wings fold and flare, tails twist, bodies tilt, every movement a dialogue with invisible air. You feel a lesson. Mastery arises by listening to forces larger than oneself. Toward evening, silhouettes fade into pastel, creatures settle, but in Marshes, bitterns, boom, their calls resonating through cattails, claiming territory as darkness pools. Nightjars replace swifts, insect nets thrown by wide mouths. Life cycles in a choreography of light and feather. Far south, continents pull apart along newborn rifts, scattering island chains like stepping stones across widening seas. When forest seeds ride winds across straits, birds escort them clutching berries, guts fermenting pulp, droppings planting futures on volcanic glass. Each isle becomes a laboratory. One lineage relinquishes flight and swells into ground-welling giants. Another dwindles to sparrow weight, conserving meat. Calories, gigantism, and dwarfism bloom like mirrored poems, written by relentless selection on tiny stages where predators rarely land. Storm-blown pioneers become founders, shaping food webs anew. One hurricane can ferry a pair of small rails to an empty shore. Within centuries, their descendants color beaches with tracks and fill evenings with strange songs. On another island, a single finch arrives and, through generations of divergent beaks, sculpts an opera of feeding styles that echoes in future textbooks. Thus, flight is not just escape, it is genesis, scattering sparks that kindle ecosystems far from. Myths call them river dragons. They are memory incarnate, guardians of thresholds between eras. Close your eyes, imagine eons rolling on. Forests will rise tall, casting shade over these banks. Mammal giants will one day thunder, then fade. But under the roots, in shaded oxbows, jaws and shells will endure, tuned to the earth's slow breathing. Already saplings cluster near fallen logs, their leaves trembling like soft flags above the scutes. They promise shade, future canopies, fresh corridors of wind, the next act waiting inglorious, quiet behind tonight's ancient players. You enter the morning beneath a pale sky, newly washed of soot, breathing air that tastes faintly of resin. And rain, around you, ground once carpeted in ferns, now bristles with saplings, each stem no thicker than a finger, yet already pointed at the sun with quiet certainty. Their leaves are small, wax bright, arranged in careful spirals, solar panels, tuned to every photon that slips between passing clouds. You kneel and lay a palm on the soil. It is warm, springy, threaded with the silk of fungal threads, stitching root to root in secret communion. Not far away, stumps of the ancient world stand like broken pillars, charcoal silhouettes from fires that once swept these slopes. Their surfaces are gouged by beetle burrows, softened by moss, rimmed with the first green tongues of ivy. The contrast is gentle rather than tragic, for in their shadow rise the heirs of renewal, young conifers, with limbs of blue-green needles, pioneer hardwoods whose thin bark already conceals a vascular labyrinth thrumming with sap. When wind passes, the saplings sway as one body, sharing balance through subterranean touch. Sunlight strengthens. With each golden beam, leaves open wider, stomata gape, and vast invisible currents begin to flow. Carbon dioxide slips into leaf. Chambers, water molecules, march upward from soil to crown, pulled by evaporative thirst through xylem tubes thinner than hair and stronger than steel. At dawn the forest may be a quiet organ, but by noon it becomes a set of lungs, inhaling carbon, exhaling oxygen, condensing vapor into breath that will drift skyward, seed clouds, and fall again as rain. These first woodlands are mosaics of returning conifers, islands of flowering shrubs, corridors of towering horsetails, older than memory. Angiosperms, newly evolved masters of color and scent, craft petals shaped like trumpets, bowls, and pendulums. Their pigments carotenoid golds, anthocyanin reds, flavanol blues, anthocyane verdis nectar that waits in hidden wells. Though few yet roam, every blossom is an experiment, preparing for visitors who will soon hum through shaded aisles. Tree after tree pushes into the sky, some achieving heights rarely seen since the dinosaur era. As canopies knit, shade deepens across the floor. Ferns retreat. Shade-tolerant seedlings bide time in the gloaming, a living seed bank waiting for lightning or wind to craft an opening. Deadfall becomes nurse logs, spongy with rot, reservoirs of moisture that cradle fungi, snails, and the next generation of roots. Woodpecker-like birds, recently descended from arboreal theropods, drill for grubs. Their tapping sets a gentle metronome for the day. High above, branches weave into a living architecture of light and air. Leaves overlap like scales on an enormous lungfish, maximizing surface while minimizing waste. Sunflecks dance across understory trunks, shifting with every puff of breeze. In those flecks, chloroplasts switch to overdrive, forging sugar chains that will later strengthen cell walls, thicken bark, and build fruit. Fruit appears tentatively at first, small drupes, leathery pods, bitter capsules. Yet each package is a negotiation with future dispersers, nutrition in exchange for transport. Some pods burst open with audible pops, catapulting seeds into leaf litter. Others simply fall, trusting gravity and chance mammal mouths emerging from nearby burrows. The forest writes its continuance into every kernel of starch and DNA hidden. Beneath fragrant skins, season follows season. Rains return in predictable pulses, drawn inland by forest-made humidity. Rivers swell, carrying leaf litter to plains where floodwaters deposit black silt. In that silt germinate willows, alders, and reeds, pioneers of riparian corridors that stretch green ribbons between mountains and sea. Photosynthesis now operates at continental scale, enough to nudge atmospheric chemistry. Oxygen climbs, carbon ebbs, and ozone mends its ultraviolet shield. Spectral sunlight reaches the floor uninterrupted, painting lichens in impossible blues. With oxygen rises fire, not as apocalypse but as gardener. Lightning ignites dry crowns. Flames race, clearing underbrush, cracking cone scales, unlocking seeds that germinate only in ash. Some trees evolve thick cork bark. Others store water in succulent trunks. Still others sprint through life cycles, scattering embryos before flame arrives. Fire and forest enter a rhythmic dialogue of destruction and renewal, each teaching the other how to persist. You wander into a grove of ancient relatives of magnolias. Their waxy leaves smell of lemon. Their flowers open at chest height, creamy chalices cupping rings of pollen. A breeze sends petals drifting like silent snow. Where they land, beetles crawl inside, dusted with golden grains destined for another bloom. Pollination has found its first contractors, and trade has begun. Scent and shelter for flight and fidelity. Listen, overhead, wind strums branches into low chords. Below, roots creak softly against neighboring roots, exchanging chemical whispers. Mycorrhizal fungi ferry warnings of herbivore bites from tree to tree. Tannin production spikes miles away, a defensive murmur traveling through soil. Communication here is slower than speech, yet faster than decay. Proof that cognition need not wear a brain dot at the edge of a clearing. You see a pioneer, giant tan, early sycamorites, mottled bark flaking in pale sheets. It shades a pool fed by recent rains. In the mirror stillness, floating mats of duckweed duplicate each hour, sequestering nitrates washed from upland soils. Tadpoles nibble the mats, passing nutrients to frogs that will soon climb trunks at night. Singing for mates under star-washed leaves, not all is gentle. Vines coil upward, using trunks as living ladders to reach light. Their tendrils tighten, sometimes strangling the host's parasitic ambition written in green. But the death of one tree opens a skylight, feeding dozens more. Competition and cooperation loop endlessly, weaving resilience into every canopy gap and valley. By late afternoon, the forest exhales a mist of terpenes and isoprene molecules that scent the air with pine, citrus, and spice. These gases reflect some sunlight, cooling the canopy even as they perfume the wind. Above, clouds blossom from vapor. Droplets form around biogenic particles and begin their gentle descent. First, a soft patter, then a steady shower. Leaves shed water in rivulets that collect on moss, drip to roots, and dive again into earth. Under the soil, pulses of tiny root feeders and mites churn microtunnels that aerate clay, letting rainfall sink deeper. Fungal hyphae lace those tunnels, like telephone wires, relaying nutrients and electrochemical signals. In quiet moments you can almost sense the vibration of baseline beneath birdsong of ions exchanged and molecules traded. This commerce of the unseen builds crumbly structure that resists erosion, anchors water in drought, and frees minerals locked since the asteroid's heat. Together they craft soil rich enough to welcome wings. Their slow industry will soon nourish flowers, nectar, and the architects of flight beneath a fallen trunk. Luminescent mushrooms glow with internal lanterns, decomposing lignin into sugar and humus. Firefly larvae hunt among them, tiny predators in a green kingdom underfoot. Each deathleaf branch, beetle becomes meal for another mouth, turning decay into the currency that funds new construction overhead. When rain stops, steam rises, carrying pheromones of wet bark upward to bats that weave through twilight. They skim insect clouds hatched from puddles, converting chitin to guano that will feed next year's saplings. Energy cascades, sunlight to leaf, leaf to caterpillar, caterpillar to bat, bat to soil, soil back to root. Night drops quickly here. Moonlight filters through layered foliage in pale ladders. Somewhere an owl glides, wings silent, its eyes reflecting the same silver as river bends beyond the trees. The canopy rests, but never sleeps entirely. Phloem flows, genes repair, seeds swell. You lie on a cushion of dry needles and look up at the broken mosaic of stars between branch silhouettes. The smell of wet earth fills your lungs, richer than any incense. Every inhalation is a loan from chloroplasts. Every exhalation a payment that feeds them in return. You realize you are part of the closed loop, a walking paragraph in the forest's breathing sentence. Dawn again. A shaft of light ignites dew on spiderwebs, turning them to necklaces of gems. Juvenile leaves unfurl, soft and red to thwart herbivores until they toughen into photosynthetic panels. The day's first breeze scatters pollen like golden smoke. Across the understory, a million grains settle unseen, each with potential to root into epochs beyond memory. Stand up, in all directions, trunks march like columns in a living cathedral. The ground hums with beetles, worms, roots, and the faint electrostatic crackle of plants signaling. Somewhere nearby, a flowering vine explodes in orange trumpet's color code, announcing nectar to humming insects, just emerging from pupal sleep, large. Herbivores, descendants of post-impact mammals, wander between trunks, pruning leaves, spreading dung-mobile compost systems. Their hooves churn seed into soil. Their grazing pressures trees to grow taller, stronger, more diverse. Over decades, browsing pathways turn to meadows, then fill with saplings once the herd moves on. A mosaic that keeps monoculture at bay. High in the canopy, early figs ripen, swelling with sugar. A curious mammal with forward-facing eyes tests the branch our distant relative, learning the grace of arboreal life. It selects a fruit, bites, and discovers seeds too small to chew. They will pass unharmed and drop miles away, found in groves that feed generations of wings, paws, and jaws. And so forest breath joins ocean breath and grassland breath, turning the planet into a single resuscitating lung. With each sunset, the atmosphere tilts further toward oxygen-rich balance. With each sunrise, the canopy stretches higher, refining the art of catching light. You rise in the hush before sunrise, feeling the forest around you, breathe in slow expectancy. Do beads on young leaves, each droplet a miniature lens waiting for light. Somewhere high in the canopy, the first warbler shapes its morning note. But most of the soundscape belongs now to smaller wings that hum rather than beat. At eye level, petals begin to flex. Overnight they folded like hands in rest. Now they unfurl, revealing palettes the forest has never seen in such abundance. Golds, violets, crimsons, and creams radiate from hidden buds, each color a coded invitation released into the cool air. Invitations seldom go unanswered for long. The guests arrive quietly, tiny beetles polished like onyx beads, their carapaces catching the stray glint of dawn. They crawl into chalices of scent, drinking thick pollen and dusting their legs with gold. When they depart, they carry the first messages of the day genetic scrolls destined for other blooms. Soon a solitary bee, velvet-striped, zigzags through sunflecks. She hovers, weighs invisible signals, then lands upon a scarlet blossom cushioned with nectar. Her tongue unrolls like rope, drawing up sugar built from yesterday's light. Every sip becomes warmth that fuels the soft engine of flight. Nearby, butterflies shiver their wings to pump hemolymph, then rest upon leaves like shards of stained glass. Moths that worked the night shift ease into crevices to sleep. Ant columns emerge from soil to harvest fallen petals, recycling pigments into subterranean gardens. Flowers and insects now share an intricate dance. Long before the asteroid, early angiosperms lured insect couriers. In turn, insects refine tongues, legs, and eyes to read floral cues. What began as opportunism has become interdependence so complete that neither partner remembers life without the other. You crouch beside white star-shaped blossoms. Their centers pulse with ultraviolet patterns unseen by you, yet radiant to bees. Two hoverflies drift in, transparent wings scribbling figure eights. They settle, feed, and depart within seconds. Yet that instant is enough to bridge distant gene. Pools dot above, a dragonfly patrols humid air. Its four wings beat asynchronously, letting it hang like a compass needle. Compound eyes map the movement of gnats, too small for you to notice. With a flick, the predator darts and captures a meal, mid-flight protein converted into agility that will feed eggs on reed stems. Pollination is not the only service. Termites chew cellulose unseen in deadwood, turning trees into soil. In their guts, symbionts digest tough polymers, releasing nutrients. Their mounds aerate earth, channel rain, and moderate gases. The forest stands taller on the labor of jaws seldom celebrated. On the trail, a leafcutter aunt slices a semicircle from a leaf. She lifts the fragment like a green sail and heads toward her colony. There, the leaf fuels fungus, which feeds larvae. Quiet agriculture humming beneath fallen litter. Listen closely, tiny midges dance in sunbeams. Males and females tuning wing harmonics before pairing. Their larvae will filter debris from puddles, keeping water clear for tadpoles. Survival is choreographed everywhere, within petals, beneath bark. Between grains of sand. Light now pours through canopy gaps, warming air and quickening metabolism. A swarm of bee ancestors gathers near a hollow tree. Scouts perform a waggle, body trembling in a symbol that encodes distance and direction. Communication here is geometry danced in darkness, a silent map on a living stage. Around noon, swallowtails float, tails flicking to distract predators. Their scales refract light through microscopic ridges, creating blues born from emptiness, beauty from physics. Displays lure mates, warn birds, and mark invisible borders. Beetles of every size burrow into flowers and rotting logs. Their tunnels later become homes for other species. Even the holes left by cicadas serve as drainage channels, aerating crust. Insect architecture writes the soil's porosity, guiding water and air like hidden irrigation as heat builds. Cicadas begin their chorus. Males vibrate ribbed timbals, each species singing a unique frequency. The rhythm rolls through canopy like surf, masking predators, synchronizing emergences, and fueling subterranean cities of future larvae. Beside a streamlet, mayflies rise in a hatch, slender bodies ascending only to mate and die within the hour. Their brief flight sustains fish that feed otters, which fertilize willows whose lure bees next spring. No moment is too short to matter in a web so tightly woven. Evening arrives. Fireflies ignite. Males flash patterns. Females answer in delayed reply, a Morse code of love set against deepening shadow. Tiny stars drift among leaves, turning the forest floor into an inverted sky. Night deepens. A hawk moth hovers over jasmine, its proboscis, longer than its body, probing deep corollas. In return for exclusive nectar, the moth ferries pollen across distances that outpace slower visitors. Some flowers open only at night, trusting silent jets to keep their lineage alive, far above. Bats emerge, masters of another sensory realm. Ultrasonic pulses paint pictures of the insect cloud, guiding pursuits through treetop shafts. Each captured moth fuels warm muscles, and guano returns nitrogen to roots. Cycle complete. Cycle renewed by moonrise, the forest settles into a softer hum. Butterflies sleep, bees cluster in hives, ants tuck larvae into brood chambers. Yet beetles continue their grind, termites chew, fungi spread. Work never ceases. It merely changes its mask. Pollination, decomposition, soil aeration, seed dispersal. Each service fuses into feedback loops that stabilize climate and enrich ground. In exchange, insects receive sugars, proteins, shelter, and evolutionary playgrounds upon which to innovate. Coevolution is a braided river, splitting and joining in ceaseless search for balance. The forest now runs on twin engines, wood and chlorophyll capturing sun, chitin and wing distributing its bounty. Together they draw down atmospheric carbon, not just into trunks, but into the very circulatory system of the biosphere. Oxygen climbs. Protective ozone thickens. Tomorrow, petals will open again, perhaps with altered hues. Bees will adjust routes based on yesterday's maps. Caterpillars will chew leaves in shapes that persuade branches to grow stronger. Feedback loops evolve daily, temperature influencing bloom, bloom influencing hatch, hatch influencing bird. Migration, standing in this motion, you feel humbled by the scale of smallness. Without the buzz under petals, forests would suffocate. Without spores on beetle backs, fungi would stall. Grand trunks may impress, but it is the minute architects who keep the cathedral from collapse. A breeze stirs. Pollen drifts against your skin, dust of future fruit, potential carried by wing. The air seems thicker with promise. You feel the tickle of a curious leafhopper, then watch it spring away with a force that, scaled to your size, would vault mountains in the hush before dawn do forms again. Spider webs, trap droplets, and a stray gnat carrying grains of pollen from last dusk. Even predation feeds pollination. Nothing escapes the cycle for long. Somewhere a queen bee dreams in torpor, storing the blueprint of a colony that will ignite. Come spring, you breathe out, your carbon-joining air that flowers will drink by morning and bees will turn to honey by noon. Your presence is another stitch in the quilt of exchange, and you accept the role with quiet gratitude, deeper within flowers. Evolution conducts experiments at micrometer scales. Some stamens arch outward, ensuring visiting tongues brush anthers. Others curl inward, hiding nectar behind mazes only certain pollinators can solve. Precision rewards both partners, pollen delivered only to blossoms of matching shape and timing. Fidelity increases diversity, shaping groves through silent choices of insects. Over generations, petals stretch wider, nectar tubes lengthen, scents sharpen into language. What looks like decoration is really dialogue coded in sugar and ultraviolet. Amber droplets ooze from wounded trunks, setting sticky traps that will harden into jewels of memory. A stray gnat, a grain of pollen, a fern screech becomes entombed, preserving moments of ecological dialogue for eons. In ages yet unborn, curious minds will hold these golden windows to the light, reading the silent testimony of petals and wings, marveling that such delicacy could survive in stone. Metamorphosis itself is a masterstroke of efficiency. A caterpillar's hungry body breaks the green world into sugars. Inside a chrysalis it liquefies, reorganizing into patterns of scales and wings. The change is not death but reimagining, allowing one genome to occupy two ecological roles. While larvae prune leaves and recycle nitrogen, adults ferry pollen and genes. Time, resource, and space cycle through a single life, a symphony of roles tuned to the season. Their silent choreography turns risk into renewal, proving that life's gentlest actors can engineer landscapes grander than any storm or flood. You stand on a ridge just before dawn, wrapped in the hush of a world that has found its rhythm again. Mist hangs above wide meadows stitched between young forests, and the air hums no longer with insect wings alone, but with the slow thunder of heavy footsteps traveling through grass. In the dim light a shape appears, vast, shaggy, gently steaming. As it exhales, it swings a trunk of flexing flesh toward a stand of saplings, curls it around a branch, and shears a bouquet of leaves. The creature is neither dinosaur nor reptile. It is a mammal of monumental scale, a proto-elephant called a pantodont. Its head carries blunt, tusk-like canines. Its body, barrel-ribbed, rests on stout limbs padded by soft cushions of keratin, where once armored lizards shook the ground. With tails and talons, fur now ripples in slow waves, collecting dew warding chill. The change feels profound yet peaceful as though the planet has chosen velvet over scale, warmth over indifference. You descend toward the valley, feet sinking into loam enriched by centuries of leaf fall and termite industry. Around you, herds of smaller ungulates merge and separate like schools of fish on land. Gazelle-sized litoptons, clip ferns, their toes ending in embryonic hooves. Nearby, teniodonts forage with claws built for digging, overturning soil to reveal roots and tubers that feed not only themselves, but the sprouting seeds left by birds and wind. Every giant begins as a miniature. You think, watching calves totter around the pantodont's legs. Milk flows, warm and fatty, a mobile reservoir of solar energy once harvested by fern, converted by insect, and packed into maternal blood. Life here is kinetic alchemy, sunlight to sugar, sugar to muscle, muscle to motion that presses new trails. Across the plain, those trails, in time, will channel runoff, direct seeds, and become pathways for predators. Predators, too, have grown bold. Between stands of dawn-lit conifers you glimpse a pair of creodonts sleek, carnivores with jaws that open wider than any cats you will ever know. They pace the edge of the herd, dark backs rippling, amber eyes measuring distance to the smallest calf, yet the hunt waits, dew dampened scent, and the sun has not yet warmed muscles to their swiftest reach. Balance endures in the pause. The sky lifts, rinsed with rose and gold. In full daylight, the diversity of furred colossi reveals itself. There are early bruntothers, double-horned but gentle, browsing high branches like living cranes. There are intricate ancestors, already dreaming of heights that will one day match modest hills. And looming at the forest margin, claws curved like scythes, stalks a giant ground sloth, the megathride prototype, moving with contemplative slowness. Each footstep a careful negotiation with gravity. Unlike reptiles that relied on external heat, these mammals carry furnaces within. Their hearts beat warm rivers of blood, allowing muscles to knit dense fibers for endurance rather than sprint. Lungs expand like bellows, noses steam in the cool morning, and every breath clouds the air with invisible water that will soon join clouds overhead. You can almost hear metabolism itself, a low music beneath the rustling leaves. Flowers, earlier courted by insects, now collaborate with these giants in co-evolutionary pacts. Seeds encased in tough shells survive digestion to be sown miles away in fertile dung. Burrs hook into shaggy fur, riding until they fall into uncolonized clearings. Even tree trunks respond. Some evolve thickened bark at browsing height. Others produce volatile oils that taste bitter yet slow microbial rot when branches are broken. The forest and the mammals negotiate without words, each adapting to the other, each securing tomorrow. You pause at a stream where water babbles over stones polished by centuries. A tapir like Eutherian steps in, snout dipping to sip. Its reflection wavers alongside yours, two mammals meeting across epochs. Behind it, the pantodont herd approaches the ford. They enter single file, churning silt that will feed downstream floodplains. Fish dart between their legs, feasting on loosened algae. Everywhere, every motion rewrites geography. High above, eagles descendants of those first post-impact birds circle on thermals generated by sun-striking vast mammalian backs. Their shadows glide across hide and fur, unnoticed except when a tail flicks or an ear twitches. One eagle dives, seizing a snake startled by the giant's march. Predator upon predator, yet the balance holds. No species dominates for long, held in check by climate, by scarcity, by the unyielding calculus of energy in and energy out. Midday heat settles. The pantodonts rest beneath sprawling trees, whose limbs now reach widths measured in stories. Ground sloths rise on hind legs, pulling entire branches down to mouths ringed with square molars suited for shredding cellulose. Creodonts retreat into shade to pant, their rib cages heaving. Insects swarm above dung piles, beginning their swift dance of decomposition. Time here is layered, seconds in wing beats, hours in grazing, seasons in migrations, epochs in bone the record keeper. Already, rivers carry weathered skeletons to oxbow beds where silt will entomb them. Minerals will replace collagen, and the shape of former life will sleep in stone until revealed by distant chisels. You imagine a future observer holding a fossilized pantodont tooth, marveling at its size, inferring the forest that nourished it, the climate that allowed such mass. Deep time compresses stories into quiet tablets. Clouds gather late in the day, towering anvils swollen with tropical moisture. Thunder rolls, echoing like dinosaur footsteps half remembered by the earth. Rain pours, drumming on leaves, pelting fur, cooling overheated bodies. You watch a juvenile brontothia shake water in shimmering arcs, then trot in playful circles. Charged by the scent of wet soil, entire herds shift, following instincts to higher ground where runoff will not bog hooves. Evening finds you on a granite outcrop overlooking a floodplain turned mirror by lingering pools. In the fading light, silhouettes move, a ground sloth scratching bark for resin, a family of entelodon's pig, like omnivores rooting for fallen fruit, their jaws capable of cracking bone if hunger so demanded. Stars emerge, mirrored in water, constellations above and below framing the quiet giants between. Night carries cooler air scented with damp earth and crushed mint. From distant ridges come low bellows territorial calls of unitheas, skulls, adorned with ossified knobs. Their voices vibrate the ground, a sonorous claim that travels farther than sight. Smaller mammals freeze, listening, then resume scurrying beneath ferns. Owls swoop, bats flutter, and somewhere a creodont completes its silent kill, ensuring that even under starlight the energy wheel spins. Lying on your back, you reflect on the path from shrew-sized survivors to these titans. Natural selection, given oxygen, warmth, and open niches, scaled bodies upward by tweaking genes that control growth rates, limb proportions, dental formulas. Yet size alone is not triumph. Brains enlarge too, especially olfactory bulbs mapping. Scent worlds as complex as any color palette. Intelligence emerges, not for abstraction, but for memory of roots, recognition of kin, and a negotiation of ever-shifting alliances. Before sleep reaches you, the ground trembles faintly, though no creature passes. It is the distant voice of the Earth's own restlessness. Tectonic plates grinding, mantle plumes lifting continental crust, mountains rising grain by grain. These tremors hint at landscapes yet to form barriers that will isolate populations, corridors that will invite migrations. Giants may walk where seas now lie. Seas may flood grasslands where herds currently graze. Evolution's stage is never still. Dawn again, crisp and golden. Steam rises off dark backs as the herd moves on. In their wake lie prints deep enough to catch dew, seeds, and tiny amphibians. Some prints will fossilize stone diaries of journeys taken without map or story, but preserved by geology as if anticipating future eyes. You follow for a while, noting how different species overlap without crowding pantodonts browsing low. Brontothus higher ground, sloths selecting tough shoots, tapir-kin cropping water plants. By partitioning resources, they share abundance rather than battle for it. A living lesson in ecological cooperation. Predators test the edges, removing the sick, the young, the unlucky, and in doing so pare strength into the herd's bones. Afternoon light slants, revealing dust plumes where distant groups move along migratory avenues etched by generations. These highways trace mineral licks rich in salt, slake thirst at perennial springs, skirt slopes where rock slides once claimed ancestors. Memory, embodied in matriarch brains and predator ambush sites, becomes another invisible landscape overlaying the physical dot. As you turn toward camp, you look across the plain one last time. The giants have halted at the foot of a ridge whose rock is oddly striped ancient seabed tilted upward. In its layers lie shells from oceans older than forests, proof that continents wander. Soon, shifting plates will alter rainfall, tilt valleys, and invite new pulses of evolution. You feel anticipation, a question rising like distant thunder beneath your feet. Southward, beyond the river line, open woodlands grade into sweeping savannas, stitched with flowering grasses. Here you encounter titanotheres, their twin-horned bosses pale against dusk. Oxpecker ancestors feed on their ticks, trading pest control for alarm calls that ripple through the herd. When a predator nears, throats rumble, a low tremor passing through soil and bone. Predators are growing, too. Across a dry arroyo pads, a hyanodont, the size of a lion, shoulders rolling under taut hide. It follows, scent braided by thermals, seeking carrion or weakness. Yet when the titanathers stamp dust skyward, the hunter concedes. Energy economics favor patience over reckless charge. In shaded gullies browse chalicotheres, knuckle-walking harvesters wielding claws to hook branches. Their lips are prehensile, their bellows resonant. Proof that anatomy can innovate where competition leaves room. As dry months harden the plain, giants shift toward shrinking waterholes. Camelkin march across shimmering flats, recycling every breath of vapor through maze-like nostrils, while others trade scorching noon for cool starlight. Adaptation is a negotiation with sky and soil, signed in muscle and habit. Rains return with electric drama. Storm fronts bloom, thunder rolls, and newborn ponds awaken lungfish from dusty sleep. Young mammals splash, forging bonds that will guide migrations long after you depart. Farther east, foothill forests shelter early proboscideans. Their short trunks already sense bark, textures, and pluck fruit. Each generation lengthens cartilage and strengthens muscle. The blueprint for elephants unfurls silently under moonlit leaves. On a basalt ledge above tidal flats, mesonetids, hoofed hunters with webbed toe snap at stranded fish. Their silhouettes hint at futures where limbs become paddles and spines. Flex like springs, first steps on the whale's forgotten road. Every horizon tests new outlines. Horns branch, necks extend, pelts thicken, digits fuse. Mutation supplies the words. Environment edits the draft, keeping paragraphs that rhyme with climate and drift. Night settles, cooled by rain-washed grass and the distant hiss of volcanic vents. Lava lighting the horizon reminds you that even bedrock is migrating, promising mountains that will redirect rivers and summon fresh waves of change. As the giants wander, smaller lives orbit them like moons. Swarms of midges hover in humid wakes above their backs, drawing insectivorous birds that surf rising eddies of warmth. Each footfall churns soil, releasing beetles that lure arm-length anteaters whose tongues flick quicker than thought. Dung. Beetles sculpt spheres from steaming piles, rolling them with unwavering resolve. Seeds hidden inside will sprout in perfectly placed packets of fertilizer. Ticks gorge, oxpeckers prune, and, beneath hooves, buried bulbs crack open toward light. Meanwhile, burrows left by forgotten roots collapse under the herd's weight, creating shallow ponds that trap rain and reflect widening skies. Frogs claim these ephemeral waters, their choruses swelling nightfall into symphony. Thus, every gesture of bulk becomes an invitation for delicacy, and the architecture of landscape rewrites itself with each migrating season. Grass whispers, remembering. Earlier rulers now forestalls. You begin this chapter with bare feet on warm stone. Feel the slow pulse of the planet where it meets the sky. Everything around you appears still, yet beneath the crust a congregation of forces rearranges the map inch by deliberate inch. The ground you stand on once belonged to a different latitude, smelled a different air, gazed at a different constellation tilt. Now it drifts northward, ferrying forests, rivers, and the bones of sleeping mammals toward climates they have never known. Picture the world only a few million heartbeats after the giants of fur returned. It is the early Paleocene, and Earth resembles a half-finished puzzle. The Atlantic Ocean young and narrow, the Pacific vast and old, the Indian Ocean just beginning to inhale warm tides. South America, an island of solitude, floats west of Africa like a dream severed from waking. Australia, still tethered to Antarctica by crustal threads, leans away in slow curiosity. India rushes northeast at a reckless pace, a continental craft propelled by currents rolling deep within the mantle. Land and sea rehearse a tectonic ballet that will last the rest of geologic time. You kneel and lay a hand on the rock, sensing convection cells cycling heat from metallic core to stony surface. Hot mantle plume rises, spreads beneath plates, cools, sinks again, in a rhythm as slow as coral growth, yet as unstoppable as dawn. At spreading ridges, basalt oozes into seawater, chills into black pillows, adding new floor to expanding oceans. At trenches, old lithosphere dives back into mantle, dragging seafloor, sediments, and fossil whispers downward to be melted into future mountains. Stand at the mid-Atlantic ridge, if only in thought. Here magma wells, upward, forcing Eurasia and North America apart. Each year they retreat from each other by the width of a fingernail. But over millennia, that fingernail becomes a handspan, then a river, then the expanse that will one day carry clipper ships and fiber-optic cables. As the ocean widens, warm equatorial water courses farther poleward, delivering humidity that fattens clouds and breeds subtropical forests along coasts still raw with volcanic heat. Now drift west, hover above the Caribbean, where the newly born Gulf Stream channels heat like a conveyor belt. This current softens winters for creatures evolving on northern shores, enabling palms to edge into latitudes that will not embrace them in colder ages. Climate and plate are dance partners. Step by step they set tempo for life. Sail south over South America, where dinosaurs once marched. Isolation here is a crucible. Marsupials diversify without placental competition. Giant flightless birds refine predatory talent, and strange hoofed mammals sculpt footprints unlike any found elsewhere. The reason is obvious from orbit. An ocean moat surrounds the continent, enforced by plate boundaries that resist every attempt at reunion. East across the South Atlantic, Africa drifts north like a silent promise. Its keel of ancient Cretan plows, Tethyan crust, closing a remnant sea. As shoreline approaches Eurasia, shallow basins trap salty water under desert sun, precipitating gypsum and halite in sparkling mirrors. These deposits are salt letters, spelling evidence for geologists millions of years ahead. Keep your inner compass turning east until you find India, lonely and fast. Propelled by slab pull in the vanished Neotethys, the subcontinent advances 20 centimeters each year swift, as nails grow, yet furious for geology. Ahead lies Eurasia's underbelly, a continent too massive to yield. Collision is inevitable, a slow-motion impact that will fold sediments skyward, draining oceans, and lifting seafloor fossils to heights where snow leopards will one day leave. Paw print. Pause the moment of collision and listen to granite grind on schist. The first pulses of uplift wrinkle a nascent mountain chain. Rivers, redirected, carve gorges, carry silt to floodplains that feed ungulates grazing in lush valleys. Monsoon circulation intensifies, powered by the new topographies, tug on air warmed by tropical seas. Raindrops travel from ocean to cloud to peak to river, engraving canyons deep enough to speak of tectonic ambition. Southward again, you float over still-paired Australia and Antarctica, but tension builds along their seam. Heat wells beneath, the rift like breath under trapped parchment. One night, though, night is merely metaphor for epics the link snaps. Australia sails north, ferrying eucalyptus seeds and marsupials. Antarctica turns colder, now circled by an uninterrupted current that isolates it in a spinning moat of frigid water. Ice crystals grow, first seasonal, then permanent, promising a climatic future where glaciers will sculpt valleys like glass artists. Shaping molten sand everywhere you look, the crust fractures, heals, shifts. Mountain arcs rim the Pacific like raised stitches. The Andes, newborn but ambitious. The Rockies, rejuvenated by far-traveled subduction. The volcanic arcs of the Pacific Northwest, each vent a punctuation mark in magma's long sentence. Plates crash, slide, grind, transform faults, translate. Lateral motion into earthquakes that will one day rattle cities not yet dreamed. Imagine life feeling these movements from ground level. Forests migrate upslope or northward, tracking comfort zones of temperature and rainfall. Mammal herds follow green corridors that open, then close, responding to inland seas that flood and retreat as plates flex under sediment load. When seaways form such as the narrowing connection between North and South America, marine life migrates. When land bridges rise, terrestrial creatures interchange, rewriting ecosystems with every paw print dot. The Eocene arrives wrapped in greenhouse. Warmth, palm fronds unfurled near Arctic shores, where winter light lingers, but frost remains distant memory. Alligators lounge in swamps beneath midnight sun. Yet beneath this balmy surface, tectonic forces draft the prologue to an icehouse. As India pushes the Himalaya higher, chemical weathering of fresh rock extracts carbon dioxide from air, a silent drawdown that will cool climate. As Antarctica drifts to the pole and severs final ties, the circumpolar current spins faster, sealing. Cold within a watery wall. Snowflakes thicken into ice sheets. Global thermostats reset. return to the ridge where you began. New basalt pushes aside older crust, which journeys toward trenches over tens of millions of years. That basalt records magnetic striped zebra bands of polarity flips encoded in iron crystals aligning with ancient fields. Scientists of future centuries will read those stripes as speedometers of separation, reconstructing journeys of continents the way mariners reconstruct voyages from star logs. In deep basins, the shifting seafloor modulates nutrient upwelling, influencing plankton blooms that set the base of marine food webs. A slight change in ridge height alters ocean circulation, changing oxygen levels, whose rise or fall encourages or limits the evolution of deep-diving predators. Subtle variations propagate upward through trophic layers until whales, the very mammals preparing to leave land, new corridors of krill or squid, stand now on a developing volcanic plateau, what will one day be Ethiopia. Hot mantle plumes thin crust, drape land in basalt floods, and release carbon and sulfur into skies. Short-term pulses, warm air, acidify rain, and prune forests. Yet the plateau's ultimate rise will divert monsoons, spurring grassland expansion. In East Africa, cradle terrain for hominids, not even blueprint yet. Continental drift is often taught as distant, slow, impersonal. But kneel again, press ear to stone, and you will hear a heartbeat measured in earthquakes, a breath measured in plumes. The lithosphere is skin afloat on convective blood. The astronosphere is muscle flexing below. Mountains are wrinkles at the corners of an aging but tireless planet learning new expressions. Erosion partners with uplift in perpetual dialogue. For every meter the Himalaya rises, rivers carry sediment toward the Bengal fan, burying organic carbon and altering chemistry. Volcanic arcs return gas skyward while delivering nutrients that feed algae blooms when ash settles on ocean blue. The balance sheet of elements is kept by tectonic accountants who never sleep in quiet moments. Wander among fossils weathering from badlands that were once deltas. Layers reveal turtles that swam broad rivers, primates leaping canopy, horses no larger than terriers tiptoeing on padded toes. A shift in landmass redirected a river, drained a swamp, stranded a species. Isolation bred novelty. Tectonics does not merely move rock, it edits narrative arcs of DNA. Gaze toward future Iceland, rafting atop the mid-Atlantic plume. Here crust splits so quickly that magma fountains breach snowfields, creating newborn islands where puffins will someday nest. Elsewhere, plates diverge beneath the Red Sea, offering early whales warm lagoons to practice aquatic lives before venturing into open ocean. The choreography of rifts and basins mentors evolution with stage directions written in basalt and chalk. By late Eocene, the world senses change. CO declines, temperatures taper, and forests in mid-latitudes retreat. Grasses, once modest understory plants, seize the opportunity, spreading across freshly uplifted rain shadows. Herbivores evolve high-crowned teeth to harvest silica-laden blades. Predators lengthen limbs for pursuit over open ground. Winds pick up dust from these new dry lands, transporting iron to distant seas, fertilizing plankton that draw yet more carbon downward. Positive feedback turns green into gold, gold into ice. Through it all, continents persist in their pilgrimage. North America inches west from the mid-ocean ridge. Africa dog's leg east into the Mediterranean cradle. South America edges north to meet North America's keel, promising future volcanic bridges and biotic invasions. Australia crosses the roaring 40s, dragging coral reefs into colder swells, yet birthing unique marsupials along eucalyptus corridors. Flightless birds on these rafts grow monstrous, ruling niches where no mammalian predator can yet compete. Lemurs raft to Madagascar on mats of storm-felled trees, granted sanctuary by Mozambique currents molded by plate boundaries. Everywhere you look, drift writes new experiments in isolation and reunion. Now kneel once more, hands pressed into dust that smells of iron and distant storms. Feel vibrations of a far-off tremor. Perhaps the first shudder of the San Andreas shear zone, unzipping California from its parent craton. Strike-slip faults translate crust like sliding doors, opening basins where water will pool, evaporate. Leave lithium for batteries centuries hence. Even the sky feels tectonics. Volcanoes inject ash and sulfur, seeding clouds that reflect sunlight. Meteorologists of the far future will model these impacts, but you taste them now as a metallic hint on the wind. See them as muted sunsets bathing the herds in garnet light. As dusk drapes the landscape, you watch shadows climb nascent mountain faces. Stars ignite, yet their positions slowly shift as continents ferry observation decks across latitudes. Ancient sailors will navigate by these constellations, unaware that the true journey belongs to the ground beneath their keel. You lie down, listening to crickets whose ancestors chirped on a different hemisphere. Beneath you plates creep, guided by currents that began when Earth cooled enough to harden crust. Above you, the air swirls, patterned by mountain chains rising on schedules that disregard dawn or decade. Continental drift is the storyteller's slow breath, pausing between sentences, of extinction and emergence. It rearranges stage sets so actors may evolve new costumes, scales to fur, gills to lungs, paws to wings. In the coming chapter, one lineage of land mammals will take to water, tracing coasts drafted by rifts and collisions, singing through corridors opened by plate ballet, travel south again to the seam between Antarctica and South America. For now, a narrow land bridge still binds the two, its low hills protected by forests of araucaria and dawn redwood, but tension tugs at either side. Over millions of nights, rifting will widen by meters, then kilometers, until seawater spills through what geologists will call the Drake Passage. When that gateway fully opens, a circumpolar current will wrap the pole like a cold belt, isolating Antarctica under a ring of spinning water, lowering temperatures further and sculpting glaciers thick enough to bend the crust. Beneath their weight, an opposite story plays out in the north. There the Tethys Sea pinches shut as Africa noses into Eurasia, suturing crust and blocking east-west. Marine flow, warm currents that once bathed Europe stall, and deserts creep north in silent columns. Species accustomed to balmy coasts retreat southward or vanish. Others adapt, evolving hardier leaf cuticles and drought-shrewd behavior. Not all gateways close forever. Some open and close in geological staccato, their pulses timed by orbital quirks and mantle convection, giving evolution alternating corridors and cul-de-sacs. On the floor of the Pacific, a hotspot plume crafts chains of islands that march northwest on the back of the drifting plate. Volcanoes rise alive with fern and seabird, then slip from the plume's fiery bakery and erode into atolls where coral rings hold turquoise lagoons. These floating laboratories let marine lineages test shapes and colors free from continental competitors. Later, when sea level falls or the plate bends, entire reefs will drown, exporting carbonate sand that will settle as gleaming limestone on distant shelves. Consider also the invisible magnetosphere. As iron convection deep in the core flips polarity, new volcanic crust records the switch-like tape, capturing changing music. Black basalt stripes, white, then black again, providing a barcode historians of rock will scan to reveal speed, direction, and pauses in the wanderings of land. Thus the core converses with ridges, the ridges with oceans, the oceans with clouds, and the clouds with seeds waiting in alpine scree. All these motions gateways, yawning, islands marching, fields flipping you so slowly you could nap through an age and still wake upon familiar ground. Yet together they stir the cauldron of evolution, ensuring no niche grows stale. No lineage remains unchallenged, no climate freezes in perpetual perfection. The only constancy is the restless urge underneath your resting feet. Even the stars seem to ride these shifting plates, altering where seasons begin and where ancient stories align. You stand on a wind-washed bluff that overlooks a shallow, jade-green lagoon where mangroves braid their roots into knitted rafts. From above, nothing hints at destiny. The water seems quiet, the shore unremarkable. Yet in that hush, hooves are learning to hesitate, and lungs that once gulped dusty savanna air now sample salt. Watch the small, wolf-sized mammal stepping tentatively into the surf. Its toes splay to spread weight over mud. Its nostrils flare at driftwood scents. Its ears swivel to gull cries stitched into wind. Retreat is still possible, but curiosity outweighs caution. A wave laps its knees, and something soft inside the skeleton agrees to stay a moment longer. Generations pass as quietly as tides. Limbs elongate, ankle bones fuse, and toes web into paddles. Pelvis shrinks, tied less and less to propulsive stride. Lungs enlarge, storing reserves of oxygen for longer submergence. Blood darkens with myoglobin, a crimson library of borrowed breaths. You smell the change before you measure it. A tang of saline steaming off fur, now sleek with sebaceous oils. When storms pummel the coast and rivers flood, these amphibious pioneers ride floating mats of reed and branch, discovering new bays where mangroves offer both shade and crustaceans. Salt enters milk, shaping taste buds of pups that whine for tidal pools rather than inland springs. One epoch folds into another, pages pressed by weight of sediment and time. Landscapes that nurture hoofsteps sink. Shallow seas creep inland. The shoreline becomes library, each new beach a shelf of revision. Snouts stretch, nostrils drift upward along the face, climbing toward a crown that will someday hold a Eyes migrate to lateral perches, balancing the new geometry of pursuit beneath rippled light. You crouch at tide pool's rim and feel the pulse of an almost whale slip past. Your calves it glances, neither startled nor hostile, already interpreting you through water-lensed eyes made spherical for even focus. Now the coastline kneels under rising global warmth. Polar ice retreats, oceanic transgressions flood low. Plains, stitching continents with great interior gulfs. The proto-whales follow expanding corridors, exchanging genes across thousands of kilometers of warm, shallow sea. In this aqueous highway, selection paints skin with countershading, streamlines skulls, and tucks hair follicles into silent dormancy. A tail once designed for balance acquires horizontal flukes, broad fans that slice water in vertical ovals, a signature unseen in fish or reptile. Motion becomes a conversation with density, every muscle syllable answered by vortices swirling emerald behind. Sink deeper into time and watch hearing evolve. On land, sound rides air like dust. Underwater, vibration is weight. Middle ear bones thicken and detach, suspended in fat pockets that shield them from skull-borne noise. A pan bone in the jaw enlarges, channeling low frequencies to the cochlea, where fine hairs transduce echo into picture. Echolocation stirs, embryonic but insistent, elegantly mapping labyrinths of coral and canyon. Where light fades, sound sows a new kind of sight. Follow a female down the continental slope. Her world turns cobalt, then midnight. She feels pressure fold her ribs inward, yet surfactant keeps alveoli supple, resisting collapse. Blood shunts. From limbs to vital cores, heart rate slows. Stillness becomes a tool, not a threat. At depth, she sinks one low rising moan that sweeps kilometers through salt. The note is a lantern, both announcement and anchor, leading her mate along pressure gradients he interprets like mountain ridges felt through wind. When she surfaces, breath explodes in cloud, scattering microbes that will seed distant showers. Food webs to have shifted. Tiny crustaceans explode in population under upwelling blooms, stacking calories into swarms dense as rain. Baleen buds between incisors, keratin plates filtering sea like meadowgrass. Lunge feeding evolves out of hunger shaped by seasonality. Enormous mouths scoop water, tongues ripple, throat pleats expand like concertinas, until fish scatter in glittering panic. The breastbone reinforces. The throat artery acquires temperature exchange loops to protect brain from freeze of meltwater feasts. As continents converge and diverge above, whales follow currents below. The closing of the tethys reroutes. The opening of Drake Passage reaves Antarctica in isolating chill. Migratory circuits lengthen, etched into hippocampi, passed from mother to calf in sing-song maps of rhythm and pause. Each year, calves born in tropic lagoons imprint on magnetic lines and star tables that will guide them to polar larders decades later. Navigation becomes inheritance, a memory older than pigments in rock. You listen now, lying on a moonlit deck, of drifting pumice, far beneath Leviathan's trade verses. Some songs descend the whole audible scale, others spiral upward like cathedral skylarks. Still others pulse, infrasonic, felt more than heard. Phrases repeat with variation, themes migrate east to west, evolving across oceans as surely as genes mutate across bloodlines. Culture ignites. Calves learn dialect, courting males, improvise coders, pods adopt signature rhythms. Where once roars shook fern forests, now melodies quilt abyss. In their wake, ecosystems adjust. Whale falls seed the desert seafloor with oases of bone, lipid, and microbial bloom. Hagfish, worms, and clams colonize, transforming carcass to cathedral. In slow ceremonies of consumption, skeletons mineralize into reef frameworks, nursing larvae whose parents will one day drift through sunlight above. Even in death, whales author architecture, distributing nutrients from rich feeding grounds to impoverished abyss in a carbon pump grander than any current. Surface interplay changes to great flukes, stir stratified layers, dragging deep nutrients. Upward to fertilize phytoplankton, that nourished fish that feed seabirds. In ways unseen from shore, whales weave ocean into singular biome, binding chemistry and choreography. Their breath moist, nitrogen rixos, microbes that help clouds form, seeding rain that will fall on continents and feed rivers that return to sea. You taste their presence in water drawn from distant mountains, All this happens while continents keep marching. India slams Asia, lofting Himalaya. Antarctica freezes, Panama rises, knitting Americas. These shifts sharpen temperature gradients, intensify currents, and sharpen evolutionary winnowing. Orca lineages split to specialize in seals, in fish, in sharks. River dolphins retreat inland when sea levels fall. Baleen leviathans grow to impossible lengths as Ice Age upwellings pack larder full enough to warrant titanic girth. Throughout, whales continue to sing. Their music carries baseline of time. Pulses reflect basin resonance, echoing seamount chains like tuning forks. Oceanographers of a distant human future will map topography by reading song distortions, learning that whales have long known the world in scandalously intimate acoustics. The language is not words, but waveforms, yet it speaks of gatherings, of births, of krill storms swirling beneath midnight sun. Sunset, you float in warm shallows where it began. Above, bats, hawk, mosquitoes. Below, a calf circles your shadow. I large, dark, and rimmed by galaxy of freckles. In that gaze you feel centuries, an unbroken thread from timid footfalls on mangrove mud to sovereign glide under starlight. The calf's mother surfaces, exhales prism spray that drifts onto your face like ocean incense. Then they sink, vanishing. In green twilight stitched by gold, the Oligocene dawns with cooler breath, and the sculpting of whale form accelerates. Hind limbs shrink to vestigial knobs encased beneath muscle. Pelvis becomes free-floating, an anchor for reproductive organs, rather than a hinge for walking. Vertebrae elongate, interlocking in ball and socket freedom so the spine can ripple like braided silk. The tailstroke, powered by outrageously hypertrophied caudal muscles, becomes poetry of impulse. A single downbeat propels 30 tons through green silence. Watch a pod of basilosaurids serpent-bodied, pioneers with residual hind flippers. Along a carbonate shelf, they corner schools of bony fish against glowing reef, then open jaws hinged by elastic ligaments, swallowing prey with tidal gulps. Death is quick, yet transformation slower. Future descendants will trade teeth for baleen, hunting for harvest, brutality for filtering grace. On the continental margins, early seals and penguins test amphibious compromise. Competition and opportunity sculpt niches in 3 dimensions: depth, latitude, season. Whales, no longer constrained by beaching risk, occupy vertical empire down to aphotic plains, where lanternfish broadcast stutter of cold light. Gigantic sperm whales refine nose into organ of echo, plunging to realm where water is as dense as oil yet still parted by sonar beams that paint living frescoes of squid. Time rotates. Miocene warmth returns, forging kelp forests that line rocky coasts. Grey whales evolve rake like baleen to vacuum amphipods from soft bottom, migrating along edible highways of kelp-anchored productivity. Their root threads coves where redwoods drink fog the whale's breath helped seed, uniting sea and shore in cycle hidden until you lean close and listen. Even the sense of touch evolves. Along jaws bloom rows of nerve-rich bristles, vibrissae that taste turbulence. Gauge school's density, feel the whisper of approaching ice. Eyes adapted to dimness gain a tapetum lucidum, borrowing starlight from surface to amplify gloom. Blood swaps out some hemoglobin for fetal isotypes that hold oxygen more fiercely when pressure rides chest like stone. Culture deepens as bodies perfect. Grandmothers escort pods, storing wisdom of feeding grounds across decades, where Open early, where killer whales patrol, where storms churn prey to surface. Calves nuzzle tails coded in scar patterns and song motifs. Memory becomes ecological scaffolding, smoothing randomness of weather into narrative hope. Then comes the Pliocene axle shift. Isthmus of Panama snaps countenance closed, rerouting currents, intensifying Gulf Stream, birthing Northern Hemisphere. Glaciation, phytoplankton booms, krill thicken, raw cools, balloon. Blue whales, lean as clouds, yet weightier than any creature before, pulse, cobalt flanks through frigid bloom seas. A marriage of size and efficiency unimaginable in previous warm. Epochs. Ice ages swing pendulums. Glaciers lock water on land, sea level falls. Continental shelves expose, forcing migration corridors to detour. Whales adapt, some shortening routes, others risking longer fasts. Each glacial retreat redraws bay nurseries, each advance sculpts. Fjords of acoustic labyrinth, where songs echo with cathedral reverb throughout. Their voices shift in frequency with ambient noise. When snapping shrimp dominate, whales pitch lower. When surf roars louder, they switch to windows of quiet. They are living equalizers. Field engineers in the studio of Earth, you sit in present day one of many presents along the arrow of time, and witness a humpback breach. 40 tons exit water, twirl, crash in thunder of collapse. Energy that began in phytoplankton leapfrogs up trophic ladders into this aerial punctuation. Your heart answers with mammalian kinship deeper than language, yet shadows gather, apes. With clever hands carve holes that prowl migration lanes, nets that snare, engines that roar across acoustic commons. Whales modulate again, lowering song, shifting timing, seeking corridors where propellers do not spin. Some populations wane, others cling, mothers thinner each season. Still the songs persist, notes stretched but unbroken, chords braided with resilience. You feel the tension, wonder if these singers will survive next industrial verse. Then you remember earlier trials, asteroid winters, anoxic seas, grasping ice. Through all, whales adapted, persisted, sang. Evolution arms them not with claws, but with plasticity. Long lives that trial learning, big brains that sculpt strategy, social bonds that share triumph. Lean closer to the sea tonight. Beyond surf's hiss, you will catch distant baseline fin, whale pulses traveling whole basins. Record them in your bones. They carry the recipe for restoration. Move slowly, breathe deeply, travel widely. Remember together, and if someday the songs fade, the ocean will still keep memory. Pressure waves bounce between ridges long after singers fall silent, a kind of ghost chorus etched into thermocline. Perhaps new voices will learn to harmonize dolphins modulating, octopuses drumming, reef shells, or machines tuned to mimic. Lost giants, each echoing instruction back to sky. That connection is the first law, melody the second. For now, the calf you met at dawn surfaces. Moonlight plates its emerging head, breath erupts, and constellations swirl in droplets. It glides beside its mother toward deeper night, trailing phosphorescent ciphers. You stand waist deep, feeling their wake tug your knees, an invitation to let gravity go and buoyancy guide. You decline, yet understand the urge. A new world always waits just beyond the shoal, and mammals have crossed harder thresholds with less promise. Behind you, beach sand cools, littered with shells holding. Ocean echoes. Ahead, Continental shelves slope into trenches that whisper of mantle plumes and spreading ridges you traced last chapter. Somewhere between sand, grain, and core, whales weave lives that unify cosmos, scale, and heartbeat scale. You breathe, listening, until their flukes fade and surf returns to being waves among many. You step onto a quiet plain that was once a furnace of falling fire and molten stone. The ground beneath your soles feels resilient, like a drumhead stretched over deep remembering. Each stride releases the scent of damp soil and chlorophyll, a perfume impossible to imagine in the smoke-choked hours after the impact. Yet here, it is decades and epochs later. Green fibers weaving a soft quilt across scarred crust, stitching lullabies where screams once lived. Tiny lichens crust black basalt, their acids nibbling minerals into meals. Between them, moss cushions the first fragile footfalls of beetles. Their exoskeletons glint bronze beneath a sun that now travels a clearer sky, freed from curtains of ash. You kneel, cupping a patch of green. It feels like velvet, but inside. Each cell operates a laboratory refining light into sugar. Every photon harvested is a syllable in Earth's long lullaby. Every glucose molecule a promise written into flesh. Look up. Saplings sway in a breeze that carries seeds farther than any injured forest could reach. These trees are children of survivors, descendants of roots that rode out darkness in dormant patience. Their leaves tremble, exposing silver undersides that scatter glare and guard moisture. Veins map memories of drought. Stomata pace pulses of carbon and water. They embody strategy distilled by eras of trial. Bend, store, wait, surge. Birdsong threads, branches, weaving memories into motion. The melodies are recycled air, exhaled by leaves moments ago, shaped by syrinx into questions and answers older than language. Some notes warn, others woo, but each one also charts territory. This light, this shade, this well of insects belongs here, held, not by fences but by chorus. Walk a little farther, and the plain undulates, breaking into ridges quilted by wildflowers. Petals flare crimson, indigo, saffron the palette of pollination. Bees dip, dusted in gold, borrowing sugar and returning chance. Every landing is a dice throw. Every take off a future forest encoded in powder. The system glitters with mutual debts settled instantly and silently. Beyond the ridge, a stream braids through pumice gravel, its water clear yet flavored by minerals freed in catastrophe. Willows rooted bends, their pliant stems reading currents like braille. Their roots anchor silt. Their fallen leaves feed microbes that feed larvae, that feed fish, that feed birds. A single branch snapped by wind lands in water, drifts, snags, and seeds a sandbar. That new island alters flow, redirecting erosion, drafting fresh habitat as surely as a cartographer draws bays and capes. Beneath stepping stones, skitter salamanders, neon stripes bright as sunrise. Their skin breathes water and air, a compromise that recalls the first amphibious breaths of life on land. They hibernate through ice, estivate through drought, encode environmental pulse into slow heartbeats. When seasons sweeten, they rise, deposit jelly pearls of eggs along reed stalks, and vanish again, leaving the next verse of adaptation to uncurl. Not all gardens soar toward sun. Dig down and you find fungal cities, white hyphae threading soil like cosmic filaments. They ferry phosphorus, nitrogen, whisper signals of pest arrival, coordinate flowering times. In exchange, roots trade sugar energy, minted by light yet spent. In darkness, even in subterranean dark halls, generosity governs. Pause at a clearing where blackened stumps protrude like memorial pillars. Charcoal swirls under your boot. Pick up a chunk and it stains your palm. Carbonized wood once roared in flame, now traps nutrients, houses microbes, and buffers pH. Biochar becomes cradle. Ashes become cradle boards. Life recycles defeat into architecture. A gust arrives, and with it the rattle of grass heads, each stalk a metronome marking present time. Grasses outcompete young trees on shallow soils. Their rhizomes braid into living networks that resist hoof and flame. Herbivores graze, pruning blades, depositing manure packed with seeds and symbiotic bacteria. Fire returns in lightning season, flashing across prairies. Grasses bow, brown, and then, nourished by ash, rise greener. The cycle sings, grow, feed, burn, grow again. Look to the horizon where low hills shimmer. That shimmer is heat, yes, but also invisibly rising vapor transpired by millions of leaves. Forests are lungs and also fountains. Moisture climbs, condenses, and drifts inland where clouds break, raining on highlands. Rivers churn, carrying silt to deltas where mangroves knit coastlines against tide and storm. Feedback loops hum. Evaporation invites rain, invites root, invites cloud. Above. Raptors wheel, their shadows sweeping tapestry across grass and shrub. Predation tests fitness, keeps herds nimble, removes the frail, and by doing so thins disease. Wolves yet to evolve will inherit this covenant. Lions in distant savannas will refine it further. The rule is simple. Life trims life, so more life can bloom. Even decay harmonizes. Fallen trunks host beetles that host mites that host bacteria, that host viruses dissolving cells into humus. Each layer unlocks elements for the next. A millipede's gnaw marks might feed a fungus whose spores feed an ant, whose body feeds a thrush, whose bones feed soil. The ledger always balances. Consider. Memory, rings etched in tree trunks recount rainy years and barren ones. Ice layers in mountain shadows trap pollen grains, recording floral shifts. DNA archives mutations triggered by heat, by cold, by cosmic rays. Now and then, tectonic heaves bury these archives beneath sedimentary blankets, only to unveil them. Later, as fossils, coal, chalk, cliffs, Earth stores its journals in rock libraries, awaiting readers patient enough to learn lithic script. As you stroll, twilight spills violets across sky. Fireflies ignite between reeds, flashing codes older than constellations. Their larvae glow underground, tiny lanterns guiding prey to mandibles. Light here is both lure and language, wedded to darkness in mutual necessity. Night deepens. You lie on meadow softness, gazing upward. Stars pulse, each photon crossing light years to brush retina. Spark neurons, seed wonder. Cosmic ash built your bones. Supernova calcium fortifies each breath. Stardust pulses in heart rhythm, proof that gardens exist on galactic scale. Wind hushes, crickets crescendo. A distant owl queries silence. You feel Earth's crust humplate boundaries grinding afar. Magma rivers murmuring below, tides tugging mantle fractions. These deep voices seldom register consciously, yet organisms tune to them. Corals spawn by lunar drag. Birds navigate magnetic fields forged by spinning core. Seeds germinate to microseismic cues. Memory in gardens is multisensory, spanning Gravity, magnetism, vibration, dawn arrives. Dew beads, spider silk, refracting sunrise into prisms. An orb weaver, architecture expert, repairs radial lines destroyed by night moths. Each thread is protein arranged so finely it vibrates specific frequency signatures, alerting spider to prey, size and direction. Stringed instrument plucked by fate, you march toward foothills where yesterday's volcanic ash soils host orchards of pioneer peaches and plums. Their sweetness attracts ancestral bears who feast, wander, defecate seeds, apriva. Fruit trees map corridors of mammal movement, drawing pollinators, shading saplings, re-enchanting soil. The garden expands not by grid but by gut. Climb higher, and the air thins, scented by alpine herbs. Cushion plants crouch, guarding heat in tight mounds. Lichens reappear, orange and mint green against granite. Snowfields gleam like memory banks storing last season's water for summer release. You drink from melt rill, minerals once locked. In cloud ash now flavor tongue. Cyclones will come again, meteors too, but systems have learned response. Diversity is armor, redundancy is strategy. When one lineage falters, another steps forward, keeping photosynthesis humming, decomposition, cycling, predation, pruning. The more notes in the lullaby, the softer its landing when silence tries to fall. Stand on summit at dusk. Below, the patchwork of forest, grassland, wetland, and rock resembles a living mosaic. Each tile reflects a lineage's memory, fern persistence, mammal curiosity, avian reach, fungal negotiation. Together they spell resilience, not as resistance to change, but as fluent conversation with change. You exhale, and molecules of former meteoric carbon leave lungs. Ray enter atmosphere, swirl into leaf stomata tomorrow. Your very breath becomes lyric in the lullaby. Proof you belong to this garden. The realization settles warm in chest. Survival is collective authorship. Adaptation the editor, memory the binding. Even as darkness gathers, seeds spiral downward from evening breezes, maple keys twirling, pine dust drifting, orchid spores. Surfing microcurrents, they land random yet purposeful, embedding history in possibility. Some will fail. Others will root exactly where needed when the next fire, flood, or frost writes new verse. Hope is a seed equipped with sleeping instructions. As you descend toward campfire glow, you notice footprints. Deer fox, perhaps the rounded mark of early hominid toes. They overlap, cross, divergent planned choreography along shared corridors. Species braid destinies without fully comprehending weave. The fabric thickens, warms planet, shields against entropy. Sit by flame. Wood crackles, releasing stored sunlight from decades past. Sparks rise, tiny imitations of meteors, reminding you that endings feed beginnings. Ash drifts, settles on soil, joining the old layer left by cosmic stone ages ago. Cycle closes, cycle begins. Tomorrow, clouds may gather, lightning may test the forest's readiness. Yet even should flame roar again, memory embedded in root, spore, seed, and gene ensures a new garden. Earth does not seek to restore the past. It prefers composing variations. Each disturbance modulates key, alters tempo, adds instruments. The lullaby changes yet remains recognizable by its gentle insistence on life. You stretch, feeling heartbeats sync with cricket tempo. Nearby, an acorn drops, small thunder foretelling oak. Somewhere beneath where you sit, fungal webs cipher tomorrow's trade routes. Above, planets wheel, marking time for coral, cicada, whale. The cosmos hums in sympathetic resonance to the garden's chord. Listen once more. Breeze through grass, brook over stone, wingbeat rush, distant wolf song. Individually, each is note. Together, they are memories sung forward. You close eyes, letting melody carry you, aware that sleep is rehearsal for new awakenings. Far out in coastal waters, kelp forests wave like underwater grain fields, absorbing the energy of passing swells and calming the surge that reaches fragile shorelines. Sea otters recenter rivals wrapped in dense, bubble-trapping fur thread through fronds in search of urchins whose grazing, left unbalanced, would denude the kelp canopy. Each crunch of urchin shell saves a stalk that will photosynthesize, sequester carbon, and release oxygen into foam that gulls split with wingtips. Thus, a single predator shields the quiet architects of marine forests. Trace a raindrop, it condenses around sea salt, drifts inland, gathers more moisture within updraft, electrifies within thunderhead, and finally falls through layers of fragrance created by pine, resin, and flower terpene. On leaf surface, it dissolves dust, harvests microbes, transports them to root zone where they swap genes, invent enzymes, and teach plants subtle chemical dialects of drought, warning, and pathogen alert. When the drop percolates to groundwater, it carries whispers of canopy life to aquifers waiting below basalt. Culture, too, is a garden. Early primates groom under banyan shade, reinforcing bonds that help them share alert duty and discover food patches quicker than rivals. Their vocalizations diversify into subtle inflections, each carrying context of danger, fruit ripeness, social invitation. Over generations, larynx shapes shift, neural circuits rewire, and gesture pairs with call to expand bandwidth of memory. What begins as instinctive chatter flowers into a primitive language, rooted in place but reaching far beyond. Step into late afternoon copper light and note shadows lengthen, stretching silhouettes of foxglove and fern until they overlap like Venn diagrams. In those overlapping bands, shade-tolerant seedlings sip diluted light, avoiding phytoinhibition that would scorch chloroplasts. Their pigment synthesizines of royal purple double as sunscreen and antioxidant. Lessons encoded during ancestral battles with ultraviolet bursts following impact. Survivors do not forget their trials. They store them as molecular diaries. Creep into the marshy edge where reeds thrum with insects whose timbrels vibrate ultrasound. Bats loop above, intercepting signals with ears evolved into parabolic dishes. Yet moths have countered, growing fuzz scales that absorb sonar, twisting flight paths into chaotic scribbles. This evolutionary chess game is inaudible to you. In the ultrasonic realm, it roars. Every adaptation leaves trace in morphology curved tragus, jinking wing. Cornfield-like redensity writing the garden's margin notes. Return to open woodland where mushrooms the size of dinner plates push through duff after rain. They burst overnight, expanding at rates that outpace most industrial processes, converting polymer chains into fruiting bodies patterned with fractals. Spores rise in brown fog, hitch rides on thermals, on beetlebacks, even an alveoli of deer that inhale them while grazing. Some spores land on distant logs, others on balconies of future cities, proving geography is suggestion, not limitation. Stand at river confluence, where tannin-rich tributary meets glacier-fed torrent. Chemical gradients sketch invisible borders. Fish choose sides based on gill physiology, Larvae drift differently, and microbes sort themselves by pH desire. Edges, the garden teachers, are laboratories, where difference meets, novelty breeds. Diversity peaks, not in uniform core, but in messy intersections, where competition and cooperation, tangle, like vine and branch. Night approaches again, but brings no repetition. Each dusk unwraps a unique orchestration. Tonight, high clouds catch last sunlight and blaze magenta, triggering phytochromes in evening primrose that pop open petals precisely as hawk moths warm flight muscles. Biochemical clocks, tuned by millennia, coordinate with astronomical precision. You marvel at the sync, planetary spin, axial tilt, genetic oscillator, moth wing beetle, cogs in temporal machine that powers renewal. You realize survival is not merely endurance but remembrance. To live is to keep record, in growth rings, in allylic frequencies, in oral myth, in the carved channels of migrating rivers. Memory allows systems to anticipate, to pre-stress stems before wind, to thicken bark before beetles swarm, to store fat before winter. Forgetting where it appears is selective, clearing clutter so essential signals shine brighter. Fire resets underbrush memory, flood refreshes soil lineage. Even mass extinction once edited Earth into stronger prose. In this garden of memory, nothing is wasted, even the silence after thunder teaches. Even the space left by vanished species becomes resource, opening niches for newcomers, each bearing toolkits of potential. The lullaby is thus additive, layering echoes rather than replacing them. You, an inheritor of billions of experiments, add your footprints, breathing CO4 trees and exhaling stories for ears not yet grown. Under the waxing moon, you promise to remember this place, the taste of resin on air, the hush of roots exchanging gifts, the countless safeties that allow tomorrow to bloom even when yesterday carried fire in its hands, again and again.